Actually, Amon's theater tech. We should be all set up in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
He should have been doing sound and light testing for you at least half an hour ago.
Thank you to whoever just allowed me to speak and be seen. I wasn't sure something was going wrong.
Yeah. It was a subtle message, Andrew. That was
Hunter, was it you that almost blew me off the mountain today with the something very large?
no, you can't blame me for anything that happened today. I was here at the house. So
Holy cow.
yeah, we're rattling some dangerous layers in the snowpack. So it's yeah, I could hear it from my house all day long. So
Keep up the good work, but it scared the hell out of the group I was with.
that's good. It's the full package experience that way. Just seeing if I know Rick will be calling in and then joining us by camera. So seeing if I see his phone number. Or Rick, if you've made it and you can unmute, good to know you're here. Give it just a second longer. Remember from what we learned in our last meeting, you can rearrange people's cameras if you want to set the lineup to your liking. And then hide your self view after you're done.
Hunter, Mayor, I'm sorry. Could I get 1 minute of your time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rick, Hunter said that you're joining by phone. Are you on the line?
He won't be able to speak unless somebody's let him in.
Hey guys, it's Rick. I'm here.
Great, thanks. We'll let Hunter know when he's back. For those of you just joining us, we are waiting for the mayor and town manager to return to the call, so we'll just be a few more minutes.
Thanks, Jesse. I could hear you in the background. Apologies, everyone. As always, things always change these days. And I did hear, I think I heard that Councilmember Inkin was on. Great. With that and seeing we're a few minutes after 4, again, I apologize for being a little bit late, but I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for the town of Frisco, Colorado. Can I have the roll call, please?
Certainly. Mortensen.
Here.
Aronson.
Here.
Burley.
Here.
Fallon.
Here.
Held.
Here.
Incan,
Here.
Sherburne.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Deborah. I appreciate that. I would like to, we do need to amend this afternoon and this evening's agenda for unfortunate scheduling conflict, a work session item number 3 this afternoon. Our social equity training has to be pushed to a different date. So we will need to look into doing a special meeting for that. I apologize. It was a last minute scheduling issue there. So I think the best way to go about that is we will ask Brody to send a doodle poll to council to find a good date to reschedule that meeting. Nancy, is there anything else you need from us for that or anything you'd like to say?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I would like to say also that the consultants have joined us, so for a moment, they would like to just say hello, introduce themselves, and sorry for the miscommunication, and they would like to reschedule. So I see that Rita, maybe you could just have her say hello.
Great. Yeah, Rita, if you're able and ready, we'll welcome Rita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Mortensen. And I understand how scheduling becomes a challenge for all of us. I'm joined by my director, Leon Andrews. He is also on the Zoom, and we both look forward to a possible special session with all of you. We're very excited to share the race, equity, and leadership content with you, have a real dialogue, and lean into the direction that Frisco has already indicated they want to take. So we're here. It has been a pleasure to work with both Nancy and Lily on this effort. And you let us know when we can have that special session, and we'll be sure to provide all the content.
Great, Rita, I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, we'll get back to you with the time that works for us and you, and looking forward to moving forward, moving the town forward. So I appreciate it.
Just send us some of that skiable snow and we'll be happy.
Once we're done with it, we'll send it.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
Thank you very much. With that, and my apologies to council for the agenda amendments. I'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone wishing to make a public comment this evening on anything that is not on the agenda, you may do so now. Please unmute yourself, raise your hand in the participant list, and please limit all comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to make a public comment this afternoon? Deborah and Nancy, I assume you're also helping me track.
Yes, I am tracking all of that.
Seeing no.
May I just help one of our members of the public, Mr. Mansfield, to join us and asked to participate, and I think he wanted to make a comment during public comment. So this would be the time, if he does want to make a comment, that this is the time. Not sure he's aware.
He was on, Nancy.
There.
I'm here.
Mr. Mansfield, welcome. We can hear you, and please, if you can state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome, Mr. Mansfield.
Sure. My name is Craig Mansfield. I couldn't make the last meeting due to snowy roads here in Denver. I put an application in for
Hunter, he's on
Sorry,
twice.
I gotta interrupt. There's some massive feedback.
I took care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Now?
Do you have a cell phone also on or something else on in the background, or someone else logged into the meeting?
No.
Okay, that sounds a little better now. Let's give that a shot.
The host is new to me.
Still an amazing amount of feedback for some reason.
Is that better?
No. Are you on a headset or?
No.
On the screen I'm looking at, he's on twice.
I know, I see that too. And
Mr. Mayor, I just removed the second instance. Hopefully that will fix the problem and Mr. Mansfield is still with us.
All right. All right,
Okay?
there we go. I think we figured it out. Go for it.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry I missed the last meeting due to slick roads down here and an accident on 270. I couldn't make it. I have applied for Frisco Water Service to Bill's Ranch, Lot 153. I have talked with Scott at the Water Board. I've talked with Karen. I know the cost of putting this in is a lot of dollars. It's about $60,000 because of a 6-inch water line with a fire hydrant. I am more unwilling to take this on for a lot of reasons. If I don't get a water line, then I have to put in a well. Because of all the things that have happened in Bill's Ranch over a lot of years, there's a lot of leach fields. I do have a sewer line. My neighbors on Goldfinch line did take and put in a sewer line many years ago. But the people up the hill from me and around the corner all have leach fields. I really am scared to death of a well with all those leach fields. So with me doing this, we get a nice fire hydrant, and Jeff has said we need that to back flush the line. I understand the cost. I've also contacted the City of Frisco Historical Society. I will be taking down my 1932 cabin and doing something else with that land. I'm in process with the Summit County already and then verbally approved. So that will be just donated to the city. And, you know, the historic park is really cool to keep the history of Frisco and Bill's Ranch alive. My other two neighbors are interested at this time. I think the cost scares them to death as it does me, but I'm in the position where I can put the line in and then ask them if they'd like to come in and give them very favorable conditions, like, well, this will cost you $5,000 instead of, you know, $30,000. I'm really hoping that I can get approval on this, because on the other side of 7th Avenue, you've already put in water lines with fire hydrants. So those new builds actually are receiving City of Town Frisco water supply. Down the road, just as it was so important to put those sewer lines in, water will become not only a local issue, but a national issue. And those wells won't be around forever. So please, see my vision as it should be seen. Always look to the future. We can't change the past. We can learn from it. But by learning from that, we can make a brighter future. So please, let's get together on a water line for Goldfinch Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. I appreciate your public comment and working through the technical issues.
Yeah, and I've submitted several written application letters to the board also. And other things I do in Frisco, you may not be aware of, I'm also a member of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So I'm there every other month and do the whole Summit County DUI court-ordered impact panels at the senior center right now. Because of COVID, we're limited. So I actually know a lot of people who have attended my panels, unfortunately, who are businessmen in Frisco and Breckenridge and such, and know the county sheriff really well. He has a deputy come, and the police chief of Frisco has come to my meetings and stuff. And when we fire back up, he'll be sending his deputies to be trained in that aspect. So I've been in Frisco since we've had curbs since 1982. We had a parade that went around the block 5 times
Yeah,
to make it a parade.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield, but to be fair, your 3 minutes is up, and I appreciate you taking the time for public comment.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hope to hear from you and hope it's a positive.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment this afternoon?
Hi, this is Mark Delormier. Can you hear me?
We can, Mark. Welcome. Mark, can you
Oh, good.
state-
I'm driving, so I'm not on the Zoom. Yeah, I'm at 106 Pitkin.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark. 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, 106 Pitkin in Frisco. It's going to be real quick. I don't have the exact details right in front of me, but talked to Dan in planning about this, and he said he could see my point. But the way the code is written for the definition of a bedroom currently is the same as Summit County. It looks like the same as Breckenridge, but it is different than Eagle, Vale. It is different than Pitkin, Aspen. It is different than Boulder, both the counties of Boulder and Denver, and the cities. It is different than Steamboat, and that's just a handful of looking at them. And it's one word. There's one word that there's an or rather than an and. And I just would like someone besides planning to look at it so that it could be subjective eyes looking at it saying, oh, this is, you know what, that kind of makes sense. That's pretty much it. I was going to follow up with the documentation and proof of all the other towns and cities and jurisdictions that they're actually less restrictive. And this is the most restrictive that I can find in Colorado. It looks like it was written by Summit County and then adopted by Frisco and adopted by Breckenridge. That's it. Just wanted to maybe get in the back of your mind. Hey, let's look at that.
I appreciate that, and I will follow up with that. And I did see an email, I think, from you earlier today, so I will follow up, and I appreciate your comments.
Great. Thank you.
Any other public comments this afternoon? Seeing no additional public comment, I will now close public comment and back to mayor and council comments. Council, anyone wishing to make a public comment, wishing to make a comment this afternoon to the public? I will start, and I will do my best to get through this, but I do want to just send my regards in regards to from the town to our friends in the town of Eagle for the tremendous loss they have experienced as a community in the recent avalanche fatalities. They have seen it. I cannot imagine what they're going through. And as you all know, through my professional work and my volunteer work on search and rescue, I have been a part of far too many avalanches on the both good and the bad side. And I know how devastating it is to the community, to the rescuers, to the towns they have been in, and the towns that have lost loved ones and true cherished community members. And I'd just like to extend my personal and the town of Frisco's condolences to Eagle and all that they're going through. And there are many hard days ahead, I know. And with that, I'd also like to maybe consider a donation from the town of Frisco to a charitable organization in memory of the work that those three men have done for their community. I'd be willing to see if council would support going that direction.
Hunter, I support that. And I'd like to just add that these guys were champions for sustainability in their communities. And it is a huge, huge, huge loss to the fight against climate change and the work that they're doing. There's a huge hole in their communities tonight, and I'm just devastated for them. So I would support a donation from the town of Frisco.
Thank you, Jesse. Andrew.
Hunter, sharing I didn't know any of them, but sharing the tragedy, you know, I think their tragedy should be utilized to further warn people that going out into the backcountry is a dangerous adventure or venture. So a contribution to CAIC or one of the other organizations that will help our community be more aware that it is, just because it's open doesn't mean it's safe. And so in their name, I would support our community becoming smarter and in whatever recognition we as a council can give to their council just in support of what they must be going through. I'd support.
Thank you, Andrew. Melissa.
I fully support it. You know, they're part of our mountain community family, and you know, I know there are wives and children that are left behind, so I definitely support a contribution on our behalf.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that, you guys. Thank you. And Dan. Oh, yeah, thumbs up from Dan. Yeah, and I will reach out again. I've reached out to them, and I will reach out again, and I'll let you know if I hear back from them in any way we can additionally help as a town to support them through this. Additional council comments, and I've got confirmation. Rick Incan agrees, I believe. See. All right, seeing no additional council comments this afternoon, I'll move on to staff updates. And I believe.
Mayor and council, I'm not aware of any staff updates of items that are not on the agenda.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, moving on, give me 1 second, sorry. All right, moving on to new business, and this will be agenda item number 1. This is a new distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery. This time I hereby call the public hearing to order. We are here today to conduct a public hearing for the consideration of a new distillery pub liquor license application located at 313 Main Street. The name of the applicant is Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery. All testimony will be under oath. The town clerk will swear in all making statements or asking questions other than council members. We will now hear the staff report, and I will turn it over to our town clerk and Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. As prescribed by state statute, all new liquor license applications must first be submitted to a local licensing authority for approval. Town council has been provided with the application and supporting documentation and the preliminary findings. This application, as you indicated, is for a new distillery pub liquor license for Prost LLC, doing business as Pullman Distillery, located at 313 Main. Applicants Scott and David Pullman have filed the necessary paperwork in accordance with the Colorado Liquor Code. Additionally, notice of this application was published in the newspaper of general circulation on January 29th, as well as the building posted for 10 days prior to the hearing, pursuant to statutory requirements. Identigo and the Frisco Police Department have performed the necessary background and fingerprinting checks for the applicants and found them to be satisfactory. As a little bit of background, there is an existing liquor license in part of the location that is proposed is for the existing Prosit, which is a hotel and restaurant liquor license. This liquor license will replace that one at the point that there is a certificate of occupancy issued by our community development department. It replaces and expands the existing hotel and restaurant liquor license, changing it to a distillery pub liquor license. Distillery pub liquor licenses are allowed to do limited manufacturing, sales of bottles, and consumption on the premise. You're muted, Hunter.
I apologize. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. I will now hear testimony from our police department, followed by questions by the applicant and council members. Chief, are you with us this afternoon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, both David and Scott Pullman have clean records and they're good to go.
Great, I appreciate that. At this time, Deborah, would you like to swear in Scott so we can open it up to
I'd be happy to. Scott, if you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I say your name.
I, Scott Pullman,
Do solemnly swear and affirm,
do solemnly swear and affirm,
under penalty of perjury,
under penalty of perjury,
that the testimony I'm about to provide
that the testimony I'm about to provide
is accurate to the best of my knowledge.
is accurate to the best of my knowledge.
Our town attorney will have just 2 questions for you. You're muted, Thad.
How did you know Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Pullman, just for the record, I see as part of your application materials that there is a survey or questionnaire that was circulated concerning the needs or desires of the community for an additional liquor license facility. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And can you tell me who distributed that? How were signatures collected on that survey?
Signatures were mainly collected by people coming into Prosit. We felt during the pandemic it was not very responsible to go out and about. So it was mainly people that came in to the establishment.
I would agree. Can you confirm that, to the best of your knowledge, everyone who signed that petition was 21 years of age or older at the time they signed the petition?
Yes, I can.
And can you also confirm that, to the best of your knowledge, everybody signing the petition was also either a resident or manager, owner of a business within Frisco?
Yes, I can.
Super. That's all the question I have right now. I may have a brief question for you on your revised diagram, if we can come back to that in a moment.
Thank you, Thad. I appreciate that. And Scott, welcome. I appreciate you being here. I apologize for the mispronunciation for Prosit. And at this time, are there any statements or remarks you'd like to make about the direction where you're headed? And then there might be some questions from council. No? All right. Any council, any questions specifically for Scott at this time? Andrew, please.
I mean, we got the last minute change today that the floor plan has changed, meaning it's not, it was very confusing in the application we had the other day. So I'm glad to see it's one license for the current facility and the new facility. And the walkway is all part of the license, but are your leases identical? Is there a change?
Yeah.
The lease that we were presented with doesn't include the space that you currently lease, which to me could cause a problem if they terminate at different times.
I believe the leases are the same. It's a new lease with Philippi. So I believe they're...
The new lease you presented to us does not include the existing space.
I thought I presented both leases, so I'm not sure. That would be a question for Deborah or Mike. I believe we sent both leases. Well, it's one lease that I believe covers both those areas.
I don't think so. And I can pull it up just like everybody else can.
Yeah, I'm working on it. And Andrew, just, I don't know if it's just on my end, but you're a little harder to hear this evening.
Is it any better at this point?
Yeah, that's a skosh. Yep. We can still hear you. It's just a little.
Let's go back to the other way.
There you go. That's much better, for at least for me. I see folks frantically searching the packet. I believe I only saw one lease, and I don't know if I saw a discrepancy in the leased area based on the diagrams personally, but.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't see a discrepancy in the lease, but Andrew may have Councilmember Aronson may have a different take on the language.
And I may be wrong. I'm going to be prepared for that.
This is Mike Laszlo. I'm an attorney and I wasn't introduced earlier, but I do represent Pullman Distillery. I believe we have provided the accurate lease that encompasses the new spaces in addition to the existing space, as well as the easement for the walkway. I am also willing to be wrong on that, but I do believe we have worked with the city to make sure that all of those documents have been provided.
I appreciate that, Mike, and I apologize for not, I saw your camera on and I wasn't sure what your affiliation was, and thank you for introducing yourself.
No problem whatsoever.
Well, some folks are looking through. Are there any additional questions for Scott? Well, some of us are looking through the packet paperwork. Scott, I guess just a clarification for my edification is ProSit will still be kind of operating as the beer garden, beer hall kind of, and the distillery will be in the back in the train car area as kind of separate, more separate venues or?
Well, yeah, kind of separate venues. The train car will just be kind of a retail outlet for the bottles. And Prost, the existing Prosit will still remain the same beer hall, but it will now serve the spirits that we're making in the back.
And what type of spirit will be your specialty or your first run?
We're making vodka, gin, agave spirits, and whiskeys.
Great.
And again, it's a very, very small distillery. It's the smallest distillery in the state of Colorado. So I believe we're allowed to make 60,000 liters with a distillery pub license, and the most we can make with this size still that we are getting is 26,000 a year, and that's 26,000 liters a year, and that's with a still running 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So it's a very small boutique operation.
Excited for more offerings on Main Street. I think, Andrew, did you see? It looked like you were coming back.
You're muted, Andrew. You're still muted. Thank you.
There we go. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Exhibit A of the lease and that we got last week. And I think I might have read the 3 different sections wrong. So just basically Exhibit A that you guys gave last week is the same as what we saw an hour ago, right?
The only difference in the diagrams, Councilmember Aaron, is that we removed the sidewalk.
Okay. I'm good. And I mean, I would be remiss not to comment even though, but Scott, you run a good business, you do a good crowd. You have represented probably the largest, most consistent complaint creator since March. I retain a concern that having seen the way the COVID protocols have been enforced, it leaves me concerned about carding and serving over-intoxicated people, because there's been a fairly consistent challenge by the town to keep you compliant with COVID rules. So please just understand that is on the radar. And it hasn't been appreciated through the summer as we've been putting so much effort into trying to keep our town safe, that we've had one primary source of complaint, and that's coming out of your place. So I wish you the best of luck in the new business, but I hope enforcement will be stronger.
Thank you. Other questions before I move on in the hearing for Scott or Thad? Do you have?
Mr. Mayor, I do just briefly, in the way of clarification as between the old diagram with the packet that had been sent out with the rest of the council packet and the new diagram that was received today, I just want to make sure that the line was appropriately placed. I understand that the intent was to move the line to remove the sidewalk area, right? The sidewalk and the parklet, or whatever you want to call the promenade service area, those are licensed under a temporary modification of premises license that will presumably eventually go away along with the emergency regulations that allowed in the first place. I see the line having been moved up to what is a dark, heavy dashed line that I believe to be the property line. But then immediately north of that line and parallel to it by what looks to be about 3 feet is what is marked on the map as existing railing on the initial application. Isn't the initial railing the boundary of the licensed premises and the control area? That's for the applicant and or the applicant's attorney.
If it's helpful, I can also provide the diagram on a shared screen.
Sure.
That would be good.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the diagram that was presented today, unfortunately, so that would be helpful.
Sure.
Give me one moment, please.
Yeah. And the issue here, just by way of background, is that the town holds an exclusive sidewalk easement over the southernmost 3 feet of all of the lots along Main Street. So I believe what is currently being depicted as within the, yeah, if we can move that screen up a little bit, or I'll just try and, there we go. You see where the line is, the southernmost line is currently coterminous with what I believe is the property line in a heavy dash situation. And then an arrow coming up pointing to a solid line that is parallel to it. Are you understanding what I'm showing there? That curved line with an arrow on it at the end of it on the old one says existing railing, right, that is surrounding the beer garden. I believe that's the termination of the licensed premises, and that the area outside or south of that line is maybe on the subject property, but is town exclusive sidewalk easement for 3 feet. May well be licensed under a temporary license as part of the expansion area. But I think that line should move north.
So Thad, if that line is incorrect, that is on me. I thought that the dotted line was the roof hang and that the property line was the correct location.
I'm seeking clarification. I'm not sure, but that's how I'm reading this map because of the location of what's described as the existing railing on the southern line of what's the map shows as the existing beer garden. It's just off the map on this exhibit, but if you look at the same exhibit from the earlier application, that's what's being shown. Maybe the applicant can clear it up for us.
It would be, the boundary would be the fence line, yes.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that if the authority is inclined to approve this application, it just do so with a simple amendment that says the southernmost line on the permanently licensed premises is coterminous with the existing railing on the southern boundary of the beer garden.
Thank you, Thad, for clarifying that. I know that was a question from the original packet as well.
Yes.
While this diagram is up, is any other council need to see this, or can we go back to full screen? Okay, I think, Deborah, thank you. I think we don't need to share that any longer. No other council questions at this time. I will now ask if there are any persons in support of this application. If so, please raise your hand or unmute yourself, and we will swear you in to make a statement in support of the application before us. I'm seeing none. Is that correct, Nancy and Deborah? Are you seeing anyone?
I'm not seeing anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Neither am I.
Then, is there anyone wishing to oppose this application at this time? Please raise your hand, unmute, turn your video on to be sworn in. I see no one in opposition of the application at hand. And given that, I will go back. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. Scott, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there's any closing statements you would like to make for council before I close the public hearing and go on to a council discussion.
No, not really. It's just we'd like to get this license approved. Of course, we won't, switch it over to the distillery pub license until construction's done and we have COs and all that. But we'd like to go ahead and get this approved so that we know that we can move forward with construction and ordering stills and that kind of stuff. So that's all.
This time I will close the public hearing and back to council discussion and perhaps a motion.
Just a quick question for Thad. Thad, can you reiterate that amendment that you need? Because we need to read the full staff report recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, because of the findings that need to be in the record. So it would, for purposes of the record, you would make those findings, and then as a condition of approval, the southernmost boundary of the licensed area is to be moved north so that it is on the same line as the existing railing of the beer garden as shown on the plans.
Okay.
Anything close to that, I think will get us there. 'Cause the
Okay.
record, the minutes will reflect and the decision.
Perfect. I'll just pause in case there's any other council comments, but I can make the motion.
Seeing no council comments.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the issuance of a distillery public liquor license for Prost LLC DBA Pullman Distillery located at 313 Main Street on the basis of the following findings. That the authority, one, has reviewed the neighborhood under consideration and finds it to be the town of Frisco as a whole. Two, has considered the desires of the inhabitants of the neighborhood and finds that the inhabitants desire an additional establishment that serves liquor. Three, has reviewed the needs in the neighborhood for the outlet and finds that the needs in the neighborhood are not met by the existing outlets. Four, has reviewed the location of the proposed establishment and finds that it is not located within 250 feet of any school or college campus. Five, has reviewed the qualifications of the applicant and pursuant to the requirements of the Frisco Town Code and Colorado statutes, find the applicant to be qualified to obtain a distillery public liquor license for Prost LLC DBA Pullman Distillery. With the conditional approval that, as per the town attorney's comments, the southernmost boundary line of the licensed area to be moved north, so it is coterminous with the railing of the beer garden as shown on the original plans in the council packet.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Burley. Is there, Mayor Pro Tem Burley, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sherburne. Any further discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Hinkin,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes. Thank you, Scott. We wish you the best of luck. Thanks for making our Main Street vibrant and a wonderful place. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
guys.
can't wait to toast to your new store and your new success and with your new spirit. So thank you and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on
Thank
to agenda item number 2. This will be the first reading of ordinance 21-03, an ordinance rezoning from the light industrial LI zoning district to mixed use MU zoning district. Certain real property located at 18 and 68 School Road, Lot 1, St. Anthony Summit Medical Campus. I will open up the public hearing, turn it over to staff.
And Mayor, before you do that, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this item as I'm working with the applicant on this project. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and step away and mute. So if you could just text me when you guys are done, that would be great.
Thank you, Councilmember Sherburne, for accusing yourself, and we'll have town manager text you when we're done with this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see that Councilmember Sherburne is now gone, and I will turn it over to staff, and it looks like Bill Gibson is with us this afternoon. Bill, welcome, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, Mayor and Council. So what you have before you is a rezoning request. We don't get too many of these, but this one is initiated by Centura Health, and they're working with traditional neighborhood developers. And the reason they're requesting this rezoning is they would like to construct a residential project that includes workforce housing on some property they own at the corner of Summit Boulevard and School Road. The property is currently zoned light industrial district and does not accommodate that type of a project. I'm going to share my screen here with you, excuse me, here hopefully, just to kind of orient everyone. Is that showing up for you?
Yep, looks good.
All right, so this is just Google Earth. So Main Street, Summit Boulevard, And the property we're talking about is here. So this past year, you saw the construction of the new medical office building. And then this is the blue roofed former Summit Professional building. Centura has indicated that they would like to demolish the blue roof building and build a future residential project here, and then potentially another future expansion after that down the road. And again, here's School Road, Summit Boulevard. So the town code does not allow an applicant to submit a development application at the same time a rezoning is being processed. So we have not received a formal application from this at this time. However, we have had pre-application meeting discussions with them at a staff level to get an understanding of their intended project and to help guide them through this future process for next steps. So something for the council to keep in mind is the rezoning application does need to stand on its own merits, regardless of what a property owner has indicated their future plans are for development or redevelopment. So I just want to frame things in that context. This application was reviewed by the Planning Commission back on January 7th and on the 21st. They did have 2 public hearings with that and a lot of discussion, and they did forward a recommendation of approval to the council for the proposed rezoning. So I'm showing you here the current zoning map. So here's Summit Boulevard, School Road, and these green colored 3 lots are now actually 1 lot, and that's the site of the subject property. So you'll notice that this property is in a bit of a transition area between the Gateway Commercial close to I-70 and Main Street. And then we've also got residential to the west and the school and public works to the east. The subject property is almost 4 acres in size, 3.8 acres to be more precise. So it is not a spot zoning. And it does comply with our town code for being eligible to be rezoned. So in your staff report, we highlighted some of the zoning criteria in the code. Essentially, there are 4 criteria, and the application only needs to meet 1 of those. Planning Commission and staff believe that the application actually meets 2 of those criteria. So in your staff report, we highlighted those, 1 being that it's in the public interest and promotes public health, welfare, and safety and welfare, and encourages redevelopment. The existing property has historically been the site of our local hospital and now a medical office building. So it has never had an industrial use on that site in modern Frisco times. And again, there is a strong need for workforce housing in the community, and the property owner has indicated their desire to construct workforce housing on this property. The Planning Commission had a pretty lengthy discussion about historic, current, and future land uses for this property, given the light industrial zoning versus mixed use. I believe there was consensus among the commissioners that the purpose statement of the mixed use district, as well as the allowed uses for that district, is more desirable for this property. Light industrial would allow things like warehouses, mini storage, auto repair shops, gas stations, industrial laundromats, manufacturing facilities, things of those natures. And the Planning Commission did not believe that those were appropriate uses for this highly visible corner lot right on Summit Boulevard and School Road. And they thought that the mixed use district uses were much more appropriate for that property. One thing to note with the mixed use district zoning, one of the requirements of that district is a split between commercial and residential uses. It requires a minimum of 20% commercial or 20% residential, either direction, unless a property owner obtains a conditional use permit from the Planning Commission. So there is a way to get an entirely commercial or entirely residential use in a mixed use district. However, it does have that extra layer of Planning Commission review of a conditional use. When the Planning Commission was reviewing this application, there's a lot of discussion about traffic and transit and circulation, those types of things. Those are not necessarily directly related to this rezoning application, in that this property is ripe for redevelopment, whether it stays light industrial district or changes to mixed use district. In either case, if there's any future redevelopment of the property, it will require traffic studies. It will require discussions with Summit Stage and CDOT and those types of things once we get to a development application. So those types of topics are a little premature at a zoning level. The Planning Commission also asked a lot of questions about what the allowed uses could be on here. Given that this is a 3.8 acre site, Under mixed use zoning, it's 14 units per acre of residential use allowed density. So that comes out to 53 units for the entirety of this site. Again, that's just the maximum density number per the code. But again, there has to be practical ability to construct such development. So the applicant has shared with us at a preliminary level, they're looking at approximately 37 units is their intent at this time. But again, we don't have a formal application. So they still need to meet lot coverage requirements, setback, landscaping requirements, parking requirements, all the other zoning parameters to ever get to those types of numbers. This zone district does allow density bonus should they ever choose to go more than 53 units. And that would have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and authorized by them as well. The Planning Commission also discussed quite a bit about future redevelopment of the property and whether this property could be split given its size of almost 4 acres. And you've got a commercial office building and an intended residential use on the western part of the property. I would say there's no guarantees that that couldn't happen, but it's probably unlikely. The site has been developed as one site for zoning purposes. It has shared access. The applicant may be pursuing some shared parking agreements. And then from a developer's perspective, to split a lot like this in some configuration would create internal setbacks that would reduce the development potential of the site. It would also require additional landscaping requirements within the interior of the site. So there's some disincentives to them ever doing that. We could see this project down the road if Centura chose to be condominiumized or made commercial pads for subdivision. So you could get a subdivision of ownership, but not a true lot split from a zoning perspective. So I just want to highlight some of those things that Planning Commission discussed during their review of this application. The community plan as well as the council strategic plan both support this application. There is one recommendation in the community plan about protecting light industrial district. However, there are several other criteria in that, I guess, inclusive community and thriving economy strategies and recommendations that do support this, including encouraging redevelopment on Summit Boulevard, as well as encouraging workforce housing on Summit Boulevard. So in summary, staff and the Planning Commission are both recommending approval of this ordinance on first reading. I believe the applicant and the property owner have some representatives available if you have any questions for them, and I'm available if you have any questions for staff.
Great. Thank you, Bill. That was a great report and summary. I appreciate that. I would like to welcome both the applicants here, and I'd like to just to take a moment and introduce yourselves, and then we'll see if there's council questions for staff as we move forward. But please let the applicants introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. I'm Lee Boyles, CEO for St. Anthony Summit Medical Center.
Welcome, Lee. Sorry, you were on a different screen. I didn't even see your name on there. Oh, there you are. Welcome, Lee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else do we have joining us?
We have a couple folks.
Yes, Cindy Farnsworth. I'm the HR director at St. Anthony Summit Medical Center.
Welcome, Cindy. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
And my name is Ronnie Felucio. I'm an architect and planner, and my company's name is Pelona Architects and Urbanists. Thanks for your consideration of our proposal for a zone map amendment for the Centura Health Center site. I've been working with the traditional neighborhood developers team for almost 20 years now. I was involved in the Wellington neighborhood in Breckenridge and the Lincoln Park neighborhood, as well as the Peak One neighborhood in your backyard. Tonight, it's my pleasure to represent Centura Health on this application. And as you see, I'm also joined by Centura's leadership team here, and they'll have an opportunity to speak further here in a moment. But I wanted to compliment Bill. He did a great job covering all the critical points of our proposal. And I really don't have much to add, but I do know that council has been having exciting conversations about housing, and most recently meetings with the Insight Collective about maintaining community culture post-pandemic. And that conclusions from these meetings reinforce the town's commitment to a diversity of housing options that serve your workforce. And on that note, Centura is really taking tremendous initiative to implement housing, and this application is the first step in doing so. So I'd like to turn it over to Lee, the CEO.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie. I would just add, along with what Ronnie was saying, is we've, it's been identified by our leadership team for a number of years now that we have to have some form of, or better access to affordable workforce housing for our associates. This really also allows us to leverage that asset and the land that we have for the community. Like what was touched on, it's not only affordable housing for us, but units that we aren't going to occupy. We want those to be able to be available to other town employers, to other members of the community, and to keep those rates affordable. And we know that in order for us to continue our mission in delivering world-class care up here in Summit, we've really got to address this issue for us. We're no different than any other business in the community. And, we've missed out on lots of really top talented folks, from entry-level associates to nursing, folks that have absolutely wanted to come to Summit, but just couldn't because of housing constraints and issues. So really, looking forward to this project and moving this along and addressing not only our needs, but those of the communities. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hi, it's Cindy again. I'm just going to chime in and add a little bit from a personnel or HR standpoint, just so you all can have relate to that person that we've been trying to recruit. I just want to share with you a few of the statistics here at St. Anthony Summit. Over the last 3 years, we've had over 24 candidates turn us down for positions because they can't find housing. We've had in the last 12 months about 50 people resign from our organization, and the majority of them referencing the fact that they can't afford to live in Summit County. So we want to be part of the solution. We want to partner with the town of Frisco and be part of living our mission, which our mission is to extend the healing ministry of Christ by caring for those who are ill and by nurturing the health of the people in our communities. This is a way for us to partner with all of you to help find solutions, not only for associates that are coming here to work at St. Anthony Summit, but for those in our community. So this is the first step, just by asking for this rezoning, where we can actually have the opportunity to put go to a mixed usage, where we would be able to build affordable housing for us to make a difference in living out one of the many aspects of our mission here. I also wanted to let you know that we're not doing this just because we're brilliant or bright. We actually listen to and have been listening to our staff. We do engagement surveys 3 times a year, and the thing that comes up every time is what can you do to help us with housing? So just know that with our CEO, with the leadership at Centura as a whole, we have that backing, that strength behind us, where people know we have to make a difference. And by sharing the point that we are living into our mission, that's where we feel that the town of Frisco can be our partner and other organizations within the town of Frisco. And the last thing I want to say is just from a personal perspective, I was commuting over 140 miles a day for the first 6 months that I worked up here at St. Anthony Summit. And by the grace of the goodness of the town of Frisco, I landed in the Mary Ruth Project. I am so thankful every day to wake up and know that I have a place over my head and I'm not out there struggling to find housing. It's been a blessing. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, Lee, myself, and we also have our Director of Finance on tonight. Her name is Emily Ebert. We're here to answer questions.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you to all the team. Council, any specific questions for staff or from anyone from the Centura collection here? Jesse, please go ahead.
Thank you. Bill, given that there's a pretty significant utility facility across the street, the school road, are there any like utility easements or encumbrances around that property that would be challenged by increasing density there? And then similarly, because it's almost adjacent to, or it is adjacent to, close to the lake, are there any storm runoff considerations? I mean, going from light industrial to mixed use, from a utility and stormwater perspective, what do you see going on there?
So we did meet with the applicant at one of our DRC meetings, is what we call them. It's a development review committee. And that's when we bring in developers and property owners at a pre-application level, again, not a formal application. And we bring in town staff, including public works, building, planning. We also bring in the utilities. So sanitation district, Xcel Energy was there, fire district. So there was a lot of conversation about utilities. The substation does not have a overhead line easement or anything like that cutting through this property that would affect this development. I believe there's some stormwater drainage that goes through the site, and that was basically put underneath the existing driveway of the project, so it will not interfere with this development as well. So I don't believe there's going to be any utility conflicts, none that Xcel Energy has discussed or brought to our attention at least. There was discussion about transformer locations and a variety of other technical issues to accommodate the project. In terms of runoff to the lake, any development project, once we get to that stage, requires drainage plans and engineered analysis for stormwater runoff. There was a lot of discussion at our pre-application meeting about how to properly filter that water as it goes off-site on a Denver water property. So those are all the technical issues that we are bringing to the applicant's attention here early on, and they will be reviewed in detail once we get to a development application stage of the process.
Great, thank you, Bill. Other specific questions before we go on to public comment? Andrew, please.
Muting. I think it's great. The great part of this is it's private enterprise solving its own problem, which is housing. But I'm not concerned. I'm just curious. The term partnering with the town of Frisco, what's that mean?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, I think for us, you know, maybe not necessarily a formal arrangement or anything with the town of Frisco, but more partnering with entities within the town of Frisco, I guess, is why we're, you know, maybe using that term. So, you know, like Bill had said, and Ronnie had mentioned, you know, we're looking at 37 units. We know we don't have a need for 37 units at this time. And if we can partner with the community of making those available to others, not just the hospital or Centura or St. Anthony Summit up here, that's what we want to do. So that's really more, you know, if there is workforce housing issues with town of Frisco, if there's workforce housing issues, obviously everywhere, we just want to be a partner in that, not necessarily a formal arrangement or contractual partnership, I guess I should say.
Thanks.
Yep.
Other questions? And I know, again, this is a probably a down the road question, but just because we have you here, Leah, have you talked with the school district at all? Because I know it's about the most ideal place to help get them having the same problems you're having and everyone else.
No, definitely. I think there's definitely a ton of demand, and for that location, that is definitely somebody that I envision of us hopefully being able to partner with, you know, just again, proximity to the school, proximity to the town of Frisco where this is located. Definitely, you know, teachers being in that kind of category of needing that affordable housing as well. We haven't approached the school yet. I think once we get a little further on down the road and we know a little bit more certain of when occupancy might occur or when we might break ground and move this project along, I think then those discussions we plan on having. But yeah, I think the potential for a lot of folks to be able to utilize this housing is just incredible. So I think there's a lot of folks we'll want to talk to.
Okay, I appreciate that. There are no other council questions. I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this afternoon? Please unmute yourself, speak up. You can use the raise hand feature. I am seeing no public comment at this time, so I'll close public comment and back to council discussion and perhaps a motion. And Andy Held, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Bill and Planning Commission for your hard work looking into this. I do appreciate hearing from
our planning commission on this. And, you know, thank you, Centura, so much for doing, you know, putting your money where your mouth is and, you know, not coming to us with this being another medical building or something. You know, we need housing, you know it. And this is taking action and this is forward thinking. So I appreciate it. I support it.
Thanks, Andy. Any other council discussion? I think it's an exciting possibility. It's a great spot. It couldn't be better for meeting some of our mobility goals in the future to have people living there on the bike path and on the bus route. I mean, it's a pretty ideal location to kind of meet all of council's stated goals. So if there are no other council discussion, I'd also entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion
Please.
to approve on first reading an ordinance rezoning from the light industrial zoning district to the mixed use zoning district, certain real property located at 18 and 68 School Road, Lot 1, St. Anthony Summit Medical Campus.
Motion's been made to approve by Councilmember Fallon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Held. Any further discussion? You call the question, please. Uh-oh. Deborah, you might be frozen.
I'm here. I turned off the camera because you were freezing.
Okay.
Councilmember Burley, did you second?
Councilmember Held seconded.
Thank you.
He beat her to it. And we're
All
ready.
right.
Call the question, please.
Thank you. Burley,
Yes.
Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne, recused, Martinson,
Yes.
Aronson.
Yes, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Lee and team, and thanks for bringing this up, and I appreciate it and looking forward to what comes next. And thanks for all the work you do for our community.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thanks, Bill, for your team as well, and account to the Planning Commission. Nancy, can you text Melissa, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I did.
All right. Give Melissa a second. It's been an hour. Do folks want to take a quick break while we're waiting for Councilmember Sherburne to come back? I saw a couple head nods. Let's take 5 minutes. We'll be back in just a little bit. Start our work session. Deborah, was I freezing a lot, or was it on your end, or could you tell? Have I been okay?
You've been okay.
Okay, thanks, Brody.
Yeah, you know, I think it's my internet that was freezing everybody up. As far as I could tell, it worked most of the time, and then it just didn't.
That's what I think. That's what it's designed to do, isn't it? Right, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Everybody feeling good? Got snacks? Then, oops. Excuse me, I've changed all my agenda and I'm moving on. Again, we changed up the agenda a little bit tonight for our training that has been postponed. So I apologize for the awkwardness and of the format this evening, but that's on me. And there was a plan, so it'll be a little different tonight. But now we're moving into our work session. So this will be agenda item number 1 in the Housing Helps Program and options for our purchased unit. And so I believe I see Don. I know his team was practicing a minute ago and Eva's here, but I will welcome you. And Don, I'll turn it over to you. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Continuing in the vein of the last agenda item, this is also related to housing. And as we've heard, there's continued challenges with housing. About a year and a half ago, the town of Frisco and town council adopted a program called Housing Helps, or that's now known as Housing Helps, which is opportunities to help property owners purchase properties and place deed restrictions, or allow the town to pursue buy downs of units to put deed restrictions on them or utilize them as rental units for workforce housing. We have recently completed our first purchase, and Eva put a ton of work into purchasing this particular unit. So I'm going to turn it over to her in a second so she can tell you all about it, and then also discuss our potential options of what to do with this unit now that we own it. And then finally, we're going to finish up with a discussion overall on some options with the Housing Helps program as a whole. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eva.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to try and share my screen here. How's that looking? Can everybody?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don, for that introduction about the Housing Helps program. A little bit about the unit the town acquired. It is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit located at the Mountainside Condominium Complex. It's located in Building C, which is actually just adjacent from the clubhouse. So just a quick walk from the unit. And as Don mentioned, the unit is furnished. When we purchased the unit, we just closed on that at the end of January. It included some bedroom furniture, some living room furniture, and of course the appliances were all included with the purchase. The unit does not contain a washer and dryer, but there are coin-operated machines. There are 4 washing machines and 4 dryers that are located in the clubhouse and accessible to this unit. The complex, this unit was built in 1983, but over the years, the unit has seen some updates. It has new laminate flooring, tile flooring. The bathroom has all been updated with fixtures, including tile and toilet. And then the kitchen has had updates with appliances, but the countertops and cabinets are original in the unit. And through the Housing Helps program, one of the requirements is to complete an energy audit that is done by High Country Conservation. That was completed on January 15th, actually before the purchase was done. And just a few things came out of that report, which would include some recommended energy upgrades as far as, sealing air leaks, replacing the sliding glass door that gets you onto the deck, and then insulating the framing of the floor. Because this unit is, I would call it on the first floor, it is on top of the underground garage parking, which is all cement underneath there. So they suggested that that would be another upgrade. Just a couple of photos there of the unit. Depending on the future use of this unit, the town will either collect rents on the property or receive a one-time payment as a resale. Depending on the option, there will be ongoing monthly costs or potential additional expenditures prior to the resale. And a couple of the options that we covered in our staff report and also outlined with the Housing Helps program and the resolution that was approved. Option 1 would be we could add and record the Housing Helps restrictive covenant with a targeted AMI and an appreciation cap, and then resell that unit with that deed restricted on it. Number 2 would be add and record the Housing Helps program restrictive covenant without a targeted AMI or appreciation cap, and only require the occupancy provision, must live and work in Summit County. Or 3, keep the unit and put the unit into the Town of Frisco rental housing inventory pool, which we currently have 16 properties that we have rentals in and leases for, and potentially rent to a 10-mile basin employee or target a specific AMI income bracket and AMI rental rate. Or I think we've discussed before in the past, like a master lease option too, like with an employer such as the school district. And so in the staff report, we did break out 2 options with the Housing Helps program, as we just identified in those 3 scenarios. And so the for sale option that we've talked about, this chart was also in our staff report, breaks out 80% AMI, 100% AMI, and 120% AMI calculations. And therefore showing the first column there is the max resale price. So that's driven by the AMI chart that comes out annually. And then what funds we were used out of the 5A fund to purchase the unit. And then looking at what the town investment would entail for that. And I can keep going on. I don't know if we want to do questions as I show this or.
I think we can keep going through your presentation and then we can ask questions, or council interrupt anytime if something's pressing, please.
Sounds good. And so in this particular chart, I did identify that, the energy recommended upgrades would be about $5,600. If council would want any of the countertops or cabinets to be replaced, that cost would be to be determined. And again, a potential investment, what that would look like on each of those AMI bracket categories, and then sort of a percentage of that investment for the resale option is this chart. Chart 2 breaks out if we would decide to keep the unit within the town's rental inventory. And again, broken out by 80%, 100%, and 120% AMI, and what that would look like for the max rental rate. I think one of the things that I wanted to point out with this particular option would be these rental rates that are reflective for the AMI chart would have to be utilized if we put a housing covenant, restrictive housing covenant, and record it on this unit. So if we don't put a housing restrictive covenant on the unit, then we could potentially change our rental rate to encompass HOA fees. As an example, there are HOA fees with this complex. There are utilities included in most of those HOA fees, except your electric and your gas. And so that could be a tenant responsibility there. One of the other breakouts, the Summit County property taxes currently for the 2020 assessed value are $1,293. But it's my understanding if the town would keep the unit, we would be exempt from that. And so just wanted to show what those taxes were in the chart and as well as reflective in the staff report. And then taxes on top of the insurance. So the insurance cost would be like renter's insurance, and that would be the responsibility of the renter. So in this particular bracket, I think I encompassed an average of about $700 for insurance, probably on the high side. But just wanted to put some numbers out there for perspective. And obviously this chart breaks out rental revenue. So the town would see incoming revenue with a tenant in the property. And then again, we could evaluate some of those expenses and what that would look like, depending on what the bracket would be for AMI.
Eva, can you walk us through how you got to your town investment percentage number?
Sure, yeah.
For the rentals.
Right. And again, I kind of calculated the columns for the HOA dues, utilities, which would be Xcel Energy. It's about $55 a month average for that utility expense. And I encompassed the property taxes, which I now understand would be exempt, and then use the percentage of that reflective of the purchase price. And then took into consideration the revenue that would be coming in to offset it. Did that help answer that question for percentages in the rental? Sort of.
For me, I'd say no.
Okay.
39% is what of what?
So 39% was the total. I think I was trying to do the total cost expenses that the town would instrue if they kept it versus what we would receive as the revenue. So it was 6680 of 17,280, the percentage of that.
I got it, Eva. Thank you.
Andrew, did that help clarify?
Yeah, I'll probably chat about it later on, but
sounds good. Thank you. Go ahead, Eva.
Okay. And so we also we were able to get calculations from the assessor data of how many units are within each sort of target price point. And so this chart is reflective, as an example, the 200K to 300K, what the assessor's office would have tax value at. And there's about 153 units in that category. And so the chart kind of breaks out, you can kind of see from the graph what has more properties within that bracket. Obviously the middle part, the 500K to 700K, there's more units in Frisco that are taxable value for the 2020 data.
Yeah, and Eva, I'm going to jump in and tag onto this a little bit. So this is just kind of a snapshot showing some of the challenges that we have, well, the public has in finding housing, as we heard from Cindy and Lee on the last presentation, as well as the general public itself. So this is the assessor's valuation pulled from the county assessor's office, and it's based on the 2020 valuation. So it's the most recent valuation. There's reflected in this data, there's 3,000 residential units. Only one of the 3,000 residential units had a valuation of less than $200,000. That was one unit in Cedar Lodge. It's a 397 square foot studio condo that had a valuation of $199,000 and change. So again, the vast majority, or all of the properties except for one in Frisco, are valued at over $200,000. There's just not a lot of that entry level in there. And then what the charts or the tables on the right of the screen show are what it would take in order to, what is your purchasing power if you make X dollars, as well as what size unit can you have and what can you afford there. So take an example of the 1-bedroom mountainside condo that we just purchased. If we're going to list it at 100% AMI, that means we would be listing it at somewhere around $280,000 or $281,000. But if you're a person that is making or that is looking to buy that unit, that means you need an income as an individual of $67,000 or as a two-person household of $76,000. So again, that reflects some of the challenges that we are having as a community in developing and finding housing for our workforce. And that is the last slide in our presentation. So certainly if you have any questions, what we're really hoping for, at least with this first part, is to hear from council on what your thoughts are on what, first of all, should we hold on to the unit and keep it as a rental for members of the community? Or should we put it back on put a deed restriction on it and put it back on the market? And then with either one of those options, what rental rate do you think would be appropriate, or sales price AMI would be appropriate for that?
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ava. I appreciate that. Nancy, did you have some follow-up?
I do. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you, Dawn and Eva. I just want to clarify a couple things. This topic is related just to this condo. We're not going into the larger discussion on housing helps until a later time after you do some visioning. We had planned on doing it maybe tonight, but your visioning is going to finish up on Thursday. So I want to stick to this one condo so we didn't want to wait until after you've completed the thought about a bigger picture related to housing before we decided what to do with this condo. One thing missing or a gap in our conversation is all of the data we have available through the Summit Combined Housing Authority, and that is the need for rental housing. All of the information presented, which is good. It comes from the tax assessor's office. It shows how difficult it is to find something in a range if you're making $75,000 or less or per year for a couple or two people. Is the same, if not much worse, for those in the rental. There's so few rental properties. So all of that presentation of information is available through the Summit Combined Housing Authority. We're also going to have a public presentation on that coming. With that date isn't scheduled yet, but to make sure that all of the electeds know that the gap that exists in Summit County is rental, significantly more so even than purchase for affordable rates because all of the towns in the county have done a pretty good job at trying to bring in affordable homes to purchase, but there isn't a lot of rental housing.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mhm.
Some folks jumped in with questions. Any specific questions for clarification for the discussion's sake? Or then we can jump right into give them direction. I know on a personal level, I think the most important thing that we're seeing is if we keep this and we rent it, we will always have the option to sell it. But if we sell it now, we will never have the option to have a controlled rental unit. And I am a huge fan of trying to put this in the rental pool. And I don't think it should be government's job to be a housing provider in a rental company, but no one else is doing it because of the economics of it. So it does fall on us. And it is part of what I feel is incumbent on us to meet our goals of 50% community members living here. This is how we get that broad range of that number. And I'm pretty hard advocate for holding on to this for foreseeable future as a rental. And I'll leave it there. Dan, jump in.
Question maybe, one of the options kind of alludes, and I know Nancy, we don't want to dive into the housing helps necessarily, but well, the way the options were presented, some discussion might be necessary. If this were to just go back in, the assumption that a 10 to 15% discount were to be applied, the housing helps what is to be presumed to be the discount if you put this back into the market of the, you guys still with me?
Yeah, we got you, Dan.
Okay, I lost the screen. So the way I understand housing helps in this case is, and I'm looking for a process, some amount would be applied to purchase the deed restricted covenant. In this case, an employee 30 hours a week in the 10-mile basin, more or less, more actually. How does the sale, if we went in that direction, how does that sale process look? So we do the energy upgrades, we prepare it for resale, it goes back out in that option of the housing helps, and it goes back out into the for sale market. This would be the first one. It would kind of set the precedent for that resale with a not market capped deed restricted unit back in the sale market. How does that process start? And does it go through the SCHA, and does it go to their wait list first, or is it just kind of is it broadcast out through the multiple listing?
I just want to clarify, Councilmember Fallon. So it's first only, I would say first recently. Obviously the town has already purchased a number of units. We have the Mary Ruth, we have Coyote Village, we have all the Peak ones. So it's not first in Frisco. It's just most recent in the Housing Helps program, because this program was new in the sense we're going to buy different units.
Well, let me clarify. It would be first, and I'm asking in the context of resale, not our purchase of.
Okay,
if we were to put it back into that particular option for the housing helps resale, in which case it would be put back out there, the presumption of a 10 to 15% discount, our contribution. Yeah. How would we list it? How would that sale process go? The assumption is that in the limited market of the 10-mile basin plus, that's going to drive the sale price. So I'm just kind of curious what that process would look like if we were to go in that direction.
The process is the same, whether it's the town selling it or an individual selling it. It goes through the Summit Combined Housing Authority. There's a wait list there. People are already applying and qualifying.
But you
could choose a different process, but we don't have one. That's who we contract with.
Do we put it on the market at whatever price we want to get for it, and then wait to see what? I'm looking for that bid ask spread. You know what I'm saying? Or do we say, hey, let's assume that this might sell at 140% AMI. Oh, that price is, $420,000. Listed at $420,000. See what offers that we get. I'm not quite sure how that process works.
So in the affordable world, it doesn't really work like that. So let's say council says they want to they want this unit to be reserved for someone at 100% AMI. And what was that number? 281 for sale to 291, 281, I believe. 281, Eva, thank you. So that is the most someone could pay for it who can qualify. So someone that a one person household has to make 67.6, I think. 2-person household, I think it's 97. They're already qualified. The most they can pay for it is that sales price. We don't negotiate. And so they're already qualified. They're waiting for that next unit that becomes available, whether it's in Silverthorne or Frisco or what have you. They're waiting.
I don't think you're following what I'm asking.
Okay.
If the Breck Housing Helps model or the Vale and Deed model is the resale model that we pursued, which, to be clear, I believe was one of the options, and Eva, correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the options in the existing Housing Helps program. How is that listed for resale?
Yeah, and Dan, Councilmember Fallon, I think I understand your question. I'll try to answer that. So when the Housing Helps program was originally adopted in August of 2019, there was no stated AMI cap in the program. When it was further clarified at a work session discussion in November 2019, it was deemed that the new standard deed restriction covenant would be utilized, which did include an AMI cap. So that was one of the clarifications, and the questions that staff had is, if this was going to be relisted for resale, at what level of AMI should that be relisted at? And that goes to your question too, or your earlier comments about the 15% of the original intention. And Eva's chart that she had, Eva, if you could throw that back up on the screen, that might be useful as well. But that showed what that subsidy would be for the resale. And essentially it's a 50% buy down if it was going to be listed at 80% AMI, because the sale price for 80% AMI would be $211,000 as the max resale price.
But it gets listed. He's asking process. So it goes through it still gets listed on the MLS and all of that, but there's such a long waiting list. Somebody doesn't search Redfin and, oh, look, there's a house available. It's through the Summit Combined Housing Authority, and somebody who qualifies has to make that amount of money. And if the town wants to list it at 100%, then the subsidy is going to be pretty significant.
All right, and I don't think I'm getting my question answered, and that's fine. It probably is not where we're going to go here. My understanding of that, the Breck Housing Helps and the Vale and Deed program would be, it's a non-market capped resale. So you don't start it with the presumption of any AMI, that you just put it out in the market, and whatever the market will bid guides the sale process. I mean, it's not unreasonable to think you could assign a deed restricted covenant to this and put it back on the market at 425 and it might sell.
Sure, you could do that. That's why we're talking to you. The council, these are the options you have. You can put it on the market with you're talking about the Vale and Deed program, and the Breck program doesn't have a cap.
Right.
You just have to have a local. So we can do that. You can subsidize it for 100% AMI. We don't need to see the chart, I think, Eva.
I think I just wanted to chime in also, there's a number of units in Peak One neighborhood that are referred to as market units, and they have a locals deed restriction. You have to work in the county, but they're not capped for appreciation. And so those we've seen, I believe when we first passed the Housing Helps initiative, we actually looked at that delta between, how much does that sort of light deed restriction take away from the market value of the home. And I think that we found, I'm totally this off the top of my head, but between like 10 and 15% of the value. But what we have seen in Peak One neighborhood is really high resale values for those market homes. And there definitely is a need for those for sure. But they're going pretty high. So it's just something to consider, yeah.
So the council has quite a few options in front of you. You could sell it and you could say, you know what, let's put it on the market and capture all the money and not even worry about deed restriction. There's no, you have zero restrictions on you right now. You could, and put that money to housing. You could say the deed light that Councilmember Sherburne was just referring to, and it's set at the market, but we think that number is correct, somewhere around 10 or 15%, but you've seen it's not necessarily true. People might be willing to pay anything to be able to live here. You have the options to set it at a certain AMI, and sell it, and we have the options to rent it.
Did you put some?
Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you. Yeah, I would probably just venture to say I'd come out and support what Hunter's talking about as far as keeping it in the rental market. From as far as real estate is concerned, you know, I have a problem with, even if it was 5A funds, you know, we're just essentially handing somebody $141,000. And you know, as Melissa said on the last meeting, you know, I don't want somebody like me in there. And you know, if we're just going for market value, then that's not going to help anybody. And you know, what's going to keep a teacher here, or what's going to keep one of our police officers here, or that sort of thing. And so, you know, my problem with turning around and selling it right away is that, you know, there's already this list from Summit County Housing Authority. We don't necessarily have any say who gets to buy it that way. As Hunter was saying, we could sell it at any time. You know, that could be written into the lease. I don't think we have an idea of what our deed restriction should be, and that should be more of a, you know, our blanket plan for the future. So with that, that is kind of where I'm sitting. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Go ahead, Andrew.
Generally agreeing, Hunter, Andy. Just a couple of thoughts. And one is, yeah, I think we should rent it. When we rent it, we have the ability to control who the tenant is. And one of the biggest things is, I really feel like we have 16 rental properties. We are in the rental business. We are a property management company. I don't know who owns more rental units in the town than the town, but I feel very strongly that we need to start looking at our rental properties like the business that we are. And what I mean by that is, all right, now we have to pick a tenant. Do we have a tenant that knows how to repair a door? All right, you know, I would love a guy like Andy as my tenant, because I could probably say, yeah, I'll let you rent the space, but we want you to consider putting in upgrades, or can you help us out? That's just the way business would work. When I looked at it, to me, and in the world of treating it like a business, how much are we making? That we have to protect the town's money. And at 80% AMI, give or take, because we're not paying taxes, I don't think we're paying insurance. The tenant should always be paying the utilities, otherwise it'll be 85 degrees this time of year. So we're not paying utilities, but we're somewhere in the range of making 3% at an 80% AMI, 4% at about 100% AMI, and 5% at the 120 AMI point. I make this point just because I think we need to start thinking like this for this property and all of our properties. You know, we also need, Eva does a lot of work, and nowhere in the calculations is our management fee expenses. So when we look at rental property, there's nowhere at this, Eva needs to be, or whoever is actually doing the work needs to be a line item in the budget to say, this is what us owning rental properties really means. So, you know, again, we don't pay real estate taxes. That's a benefit to us. So my point is, let's rent it. Let's be smart business people because we're in the business.
Thanks, Andrew. I agree. Jesse, then Melissa.
Can I ask an HOA question? I think I asked this before we purchased it too, but are there, you know, $395 seems high, but it's not too high compared to some condo properties. And I'm just wondering what potential special assessments or large capital projects does Mountainside have coming down the pike that if we rent it and keep it as the town owning it, what we might be on the hook for?
Eva, did you pick up any assessments? Yeah, thank you.
Well, going through the HOA, many decks and bylaw amendments and documents on their online site. The HOA dues, they were $308 in 2020. They increased to $335, so $27 a month in 2021. Sorry, 2021. They're $335, and they include trash, snow removal, water, sewer, cable, internet, clubhouse amenities. There's the pool, the hot tubs, though the HOA has kept those closed since March due to the pandemic, and their board is currently evaluating what that might look like if they would reopen those particular amenities. But the laundry facility has still remained open and accessible. They have not closed that off. But there were no assessments coming up.
When does building C need a new roof for $20,000? Like
I just know, Jesse, from walking the dog by there.
Yeah.
Every day, I know they've been redoing all of the roofs in the condo complex.
Yeah.
So I would assume that.
I'm just wondering if their HOA at 335 has a good reserve for these kinds of projects, or if, you know, something happens and I don't know, they do wildfire mitigation or something where their dues are not going to cover the project. And then what are we going to be on the hook for?
So I'll answer real briefly, and Eva, please add on any additional information. But we did discuss this, and Eva discussed that with the property management company. There are no special assessments upcoming or anticipated at this time. Eva, anything else on that?
It is a good sign that they've redone their roofs over the last 2 years.
And I can also say, just from the permits that have come through the office, this winter they were redoing a lot of the boilers in the garage, because there's heated or limited heat in the garage. So they've been continually doing work and improvements on these on this almost 40-year-old complex.
Okay, thank you. So just to add, so I'm in agreement with Andy, Andrew, and Hunter on keeping this at a rental property.
I think Melissa was trying to get in just before you. So Melissa and then Dan.
All right. Well, I'll keep it brief. I really strongly lean towards keeping it in the rental pool. And I would just go one step further and, I think the right AMI to specify would be 120. And the reason being, and I don't think 140, but I think 120 might be the sweet spot, because one thing that AMI does not capture is unique situations. It's not a true reflection of what people can afford. It's a good gauge, most certainly. You've got to have something, but it doesn't take into account each and every person's unique situation, people's, student loans, people's, family inheritance. I mean, there's so many different situations that we can't anticipate. And if you set it too low, it eliminates the availability for, a number of people that I think it should be open towards. Whereas if you set it higher, and you're actually in that 100 AMI category, but, you have very low debt, you might be able to afford this. And so I would set it a notch higher. And I think 120 is good. I think 140 gets a little too high, but that's where I'm at. I think we need to leave our options open right now. This is a huge investment, and what we're paying for it is far more than developing workforce units at cost. And so, I think we need to hold on to it, keep options open, and also really meet the true need right now is for rentals across the board, and setting it too low just, I think exacerbates the problem. So that's my feedback.
Thanks, Melissa. Dan, go ahead.
All right, so I'll be the odd man out. Happy to play devil's advocate here. $417,000, plus upgrades is going to pay for 2 rental units almost anywhere else in town that we are able to come out of the dirt, which we're going to be able to do in the next 2 to 3 years. Now it sounds like in at least 3 places. And, dispersing your rental units throughout town, while in theory is good, just is going to add to your management costs. It's just a little bit farther for somebody to drive. It's a little bit farther to get to. It would be this. I don't think we need to assign a typology that we want just onto any typology that comes along. If the shoe doesn't necessarily fit, and I don't think it does in this case. It's outside the core. This is a great unit to get somebody into on their own to buy at 120. Let's put the money back into the 5A fund. Let's put it into the Sabatini lot. Let's put it into CDOT. I'd rather buy 2 units from the Centura project. So $417,000 to pay for a rental unit, I think is absurdly expensive. And the payback on this after upgrades, after management, after implied management fees, I'm glad Andrew brought that up because it's something we need to consider. I just don't think this is how you go about collecting rental units. 417, and by the time we're done, $425,000. Again, hopefully we'll buy 2 units almost anywhere else within the next 18 months. So, put the money back in the 5A fund. Let's flip it. Let's get somebody in there at 120. Someone's going to be helped, and I'm not going to assign degrees of help to who we think ought to be helped more or not. Because there's a need across the spectrum of housing, it's all just in my world. Somebody doesn't deserve it or need it more. Someone's going to be able to afford it, get in there, and from our economic perspective, they're going to contribute mightily no matter who is in there. So that's where I'm at. I'd like to see this flipped. I'd like to see that money put back into one of the upcoming projects where it'll pay double versus what we're going to get out of it now.
Thanks, Dan. Andy. And then I'd like to talk about
Thanks.
AMIs, since it seems like we have majority going for the rental side, but go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, just to that point, that's if we, even held on to this for a year and put somebody in there for a year lease and decide once we're coming out of the ground that we need more liquid, then we put that on the market, or if we want to move that. Otherwise, we're just, we've just lowered what we've got sitting there in that case. And, it's equity is the way I look at it. And we could always flip it in 4 years.
You're gonna be that landowner who sends a guy packing because you want to flip it and make some money on it. In a year, if you got the person you want in there, they're not gonna want to go anywhere in a year. Maybe they do, but I wouldn't count on that in terms of going to find your cash a year or 2 or 4 years from now. You're not gonna want to chase it. If you got a good tenant in there, you're gonna want to keep them. So will that align? Maybe it will, but 2 for the price of 1.
Andrew.
Just, Dan, I generally agree with you, but hold back, meaning we have 16 properties. If we need money, we have 16 properties. Any one of the 16 properties are eminently saleable at the moment. We can also finance them. I know that's a whole different conversation, but that's, we have 16 properties with 0 debt on any of them. So I agree, that might be the better answer, is at some point to sell, but then it's a conversation of which properties do we sell. Maybe we sell all of them, and but just to flip this one because we just bought it doesn't resonate when the need is rental. So I sort of agree with you. I want to just give respect to the thought. It's just not time for the answer yet.
Like to hear other thoughts on AMI, since I feel like we have the majority for putting it on the rental market. And I know Melissa gave a good rationale for around 120. I'd like to hear other thoughts on that.
And Mayor, may I just mention or get clarification? I believe Councilmember Sherburne meant 120 or less. That would be the maximum. Okay.
Yep.
Can I ask a question on that? Because
question. Go ahead. You're clarifying.
We kind of had this discussion initially when we were talking about buying this unit, and that was if we did flip it, whether we sold it at 120 and 100, and you wanted, if you wanted 100% in there, you had to set it at 100. Otherwise, why wouldn't you take the higher bid? So if we go with Melissa's proposal, I guess my question is, why would we choose somebody at a lower AMI if the option is between two and the other person's going to pay $200 a month more?
I think in the rental
They
market,
would still pay the same, Jesse. So I'm just saying, like, if you, I find this hard to explain, actually. Nancy, jump in. But
no, I know, it's just,
I mean, basically, if you're 140 AMI earner, you price yourself out of something at 100, and the limit is 120. Let's just say I'm 140% earner. I can't buy 120% unit, but I can buy 160% AMI unit. And so if the unit is 120% cap, but let's just say the buyer is an 80% AMI person, but they've got a unique situation that allows them to afford the price at 120, by all means, they can bid on that and we can pick that person. And so it just is a wider pool of people that could potentially qualify, because what I'm saying is AMI is so flawed. It does not take into account the real affordability.
I understand that, but at some point we have to set what AMI we want to target. So whether or not it's buying power, like we have to set that rental price.
So you can set that rental price, and then the applicants can decide if they can afford it or not. I don't think we want to be so involved that, you're looking at, I mean, I guess we could be, absolutely. I guess my preference would be that it's not limited to only the one. If we set it at 120, it's not only 120 people that can apply for it. People at 80 or 100 or 120, they can all apply for it. If they can demonstrate that they can pay that rent, by all means.
you can also set a preference. You can say, we prefer 100%. That's our first priority, but maybe nobody in that wants to pay it. You can set a preference if we're targeting teachers, but maybe they're going to have 30 days. We're going to take applications and our priority is going to be teachers at 100%.
Like, I don't want to price people out. So like if you've got, say you've got a teacher, that's making just over 100% AMI, they'd be excluded, so you just exclude people. The lower you set it, you're just excluding people.
So I guess, I understand what you're saying, and I guess I come at it from a different way. When I'm looking at Eva's chart here for the max rental rate per month, I don't want to list a 1-bedroom in Mountainside for $2,100 rent. I think that that's too high. So I guess my point is, if we could target the 1,800, 100% AMI, but allow a person qualified for up to 120% with that buying power to apply, that would be fine. But I don't see a 2,100. I don't see the, let me back up. There is a need, to Dan's point. We could serve anybody with any of these options, but I think that our rental, the need for rentals is in the 80 to 100%. It's less than 80, frankly, but 1,800 to me seems like as high a rent rate that I could go. So I think we're talking about two different AMIs. One is the rental cap, the other is the buying power of the renter.
It sounds to me as if, to Mayor Pro Tem Burley's point, and Councilmember Sherburne's point, you could say, we're going to set the rate at 1,800, but that's what we want you guys to set the rate at the 100% AMI level, but we'll take applications up to 120%. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, that's what I think I'm saying too, because that gets, Melissa, that doesn't preclude anybody up to 120% from applying, but it targets that rental rate that, in my mind, that's kind of how I approach this. So yeah, if that's a proposal, put that on.
If the council wants, I would ask you not to set a dollar amount rate, but to give us set it at the 100% AMI rental rate as approved by the Summit Combined Housing Authority, so that we always track with that rate. We don't have to forget about.
Right, okay.
And that, but you'll take applications up to 120%.
Melissa, is that kind of what you
Yeah,
were?
I think
Okay.
that captures it. I mean, I think it's really hard for us to gauge like I think it, you know, we need a metric to settle on, and I think that sounds pretty reasonable, you know. And I know you were talking about Eva rolling in the HOA fees, you know, 1,800 plus 300 something is right around, you know, a little over 2,000. So, you know, I think that gets at it and achieves not excluding a pool of people that I think should be included. So.
How do others feel with that plan?
You want me to weigh back in?
Sure, Dan, always. Oh, you muted yourself though.
Yeah, no, I'm, you know where I'm at. No, I'm just.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Dan. Andrew.
I'm just confused. If we do 100% AMI, but offer it to people up to 120% AMI, then you have the person who, based on your chart, can afford, by local standards, $2,160, but we're going to give it to them for $1,800. I don't understand. Why would we, if we want it just, that sounds like a gift to somebody who doesn't deserve it based on the chart. You know, this is a stretch for everybody in this category. But I'm not sure I'm understanding the accomplishment of saying somebody who can afford more can have this for less.
Councilman Aronson, I was just mirroring back what I heard from the council, so I'll let them answer as to their reasoning as to why. I do want to just remind council that we are going to look at this whole program. Councilmember Aronson, you've brought up the idea about the fact that we're in the rental business. We're going to look at all the rental properties. We're going to bring back the housing helps discussion in a bigger context. This is a temporary idea, but I'll let the two council members discuss what their reasoning is. It does open up a greater pool of those who, let me just say, the AMI strategy is to say that no, your housing cost shouldn't be greater than 30% of your income. So by setting a lower rate, since rental is such a burden here, then that does help. I think the intention is to help, but I'll let them speak to that.
I mean, I'm kind of undecided on this because I think Jesse makes a great point, but you know, the other thing that crosses my mind is we need to play by the same rules that every other housing developer and every other rental, you know, department, other towns are playing by. So what are those AMI? Are they sticking strictly to the AMI tables? What are they looking like? I think that just looking at the AMI tables doesn't fully capture sort of what's the market rent. And so I think we need to maybe better grasp that. I know we're not like deciding tonight on the exact rent. And so I think maybe as we move this forward, that's something we can drill down further on. But what I hear Jesse saying is just don't set it too high. But what I'm saying, and I agree, but what I'm saying is don't limit the pool so much that we're excluding, you know, more than half of the people that need rentals as well. So, you know, it's a real balancing act. And I think that's what I would like to accomplish.
What if we set 100 AMI and if in 30 days we can't find somebody to rent it, we give staff permission to bump it up to that 120 pool to expand it? Because I think the need
Doesn't that mirror the new covenant, the new housing covenant?
Pretty close.
Strategy we have too.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think the proof seems to be very clear that this will rent quickly at 100% AMI given the need. So if that's what we're seeing from the statistics and the data, let's put it there. And if for some reason we're wrong or that's just not the right time, then we expand it, as Melissa was saying, to that next bigger pool at that same rate. And I'm comfortable with that. Andy.
Yeah, just kind of a clarification. What constitutes affordable housing? You know, does that have to be 80% AMI or can that be 120%?
120. Affordable housing is just a term from which government programs subsidize housing. Or private sector, I suppose.
How do people feel with that? I think started 100% AMI, follow kind of what we've established earlier. If we can't find the right person within a 30-day period, we expand it to 120% pool, but staying at the same price. Andy held, Jesse's sounding good. Andy Aronson. All right. So we have enough majority there. I see Melissa biting her lip a little bit, and Rick, he's either frozen or sitting stoically. I can't tell.
I'd like to, on this, that's fine.
Okay.
I still go back to, it's a great point. We're already landlords, but I got into this thinking we weren't going to hold on to it. I do see the bang for the buck on the resale, but I have a lot of heartburn with our amount of investment to get it to that AMI group we're looking at. So I'm in a weird unintended consequences point. I think we're all there, quite honestly. I'd be curious to hear, we don't have to do this tonight, when Vail Indeed or Breck Housing Helps are flipping a home, what level of investment are they putting into it? You know, we set it at 50,000 initially is what we were looking at with this program. And we're way beyond that. So
Doing that.
I'm good with rental now. We can sell it later. I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Councilmember Incan, we just had a presentation at the CAST meeting on Vail Indeed. They are not 200,000. Some units they are in pretty significantly, but that on average, no, they are doing the local deed light. And so for that deed light, it depends on the cost of the unit, but they said their average was around 60,000, but I think that's gone up. But
I think we're confusing two strategies in the Housing Helps and Vail Indeed program, because when we're throwing around the $60,000, $75,000 number, they are just buying a deed restriction. They're not buying the unit, flipping it, and buying it down. The buy down programs are a lot more significant investment. And I think, at least in Breckenridge, they might be setting some AMI targets on some of their buy down units, like their 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. And so there's kind of two different things. There's the buy down program, which we did with Coyote Village. Right. You know, we've had kind of a buy down program for a while. And then Housing Helps was intended to be, you're already in your home, you're already in your condo. We want to buy a deed restriction from you. We think the value is going to impact your property about 10 to 15%. And here's what the value of that deed restriction light. And then Vail's, the reason why we're not seeing AMI caps in Vail is because, you know, they were saying, oh, well, we might have local physicians who can afford a $800, $900 million home, but as long as a local is living there, we want them there. So they cast their net far and wide. And I think here we keep talking about buy downs and the other strategy as one and the same, and they're not.
I think it would be helpful to that point, Mayor Pro Tem Burley. They'd be helpful to consider one is a flip. You buy like what you think of, you buy it, you fix it up, you flip it. You buy it, you kind of fix it up a little bit and you flip it. You literally let go of it. And you say, I'm going to sell it to a specific targeted audience. That is a bit what we're in right now with this condo. We're either going to flip it and sell it, and there you're going to have to buy down quite a bit if you want to keep it at an AMI, or you just drop it a little bit and you don't have the AMI. That's what's called the market rate or deed light or anything like that. That is very similar to buying a deed restriction. What Vail did was they set a number of units they wanted to count from 0 to 1,000. That said, we're going to have 1,000 units that are forever restricted to people who live here and work here. They didn't care about anything other than that number. And so they were buying them. So that's where the buy down came from. Them just buying you the promise you're going to stay here and you're going to sell it to someone else who's going to live or work here. So that's very different than acquiring a unit and flipping it. which is kind of what we're in on the condo.
Yeah, but they're not mutually exclusive. I mean,
No, that's true.
yeah, I mean, you can assign the covenant, just put it back on the market.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. It's within all those options you can bring to bear. And just because we're in the position to own it, we bought it, you could say, so we could assign the covenant, so we could sell it back into the workforce at whatever level the market would bear. I would just want to add that one other thing in terms of, reinvesting this money. We don't know who we're going to work with on some of these properties. And if you start getting other money involved, this could be a 3-to-1 flip. If you get federal money and you get the cost of the units driven down to whatever that could be, you could get 360% units for this, but just saying.
Yeah, so I think we could have helped you a little bit more here tonight by showing all the options of reselling with a deed restriction to a local, reselling at a certain value to target a certain buyer, renting. And I do hear council is leaning to rent. We can always resell later.
I think
Could I
Go
jump
ahead.
back in and
Yep.
try this a different way with the AMI? And I'm just gonna like freestyle on this. I might get my numbers wrong, so Eva or Don, correct me. But I don't want this to have an unintended consequence. And I think all of us may have sort of the quintessential resident in our mind. For me, it's, somebody working at a local restaurant, it's a teacher, it's, somebody who's in that, $50,000 a year salary range, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. But if you look at the AMI table, so this is a funny unit. So it's based on the presentation. So we're looking at 1.5 people AMI category, and 100% AMI in that category is an income of $72,000, right? And so in order to meet that, you need 2 residents or you're a higher earner, okay? And so at 72,000, you're automatically targeting more of a middle, a middle manager professional at that point. That's no longer targeting, an early career teacher or, somebody that's working at a restaurant. You've already excluded them. So you've got to put 2 of them together. It's got to be a couple, right? Which this could lend itself to very well. A young couple renting in Frisco. And so then you take 2 of those incomes, let's say 40 and 40, and the AMI, now they're in the 115, 120% AMI category. So what I'm getting at is I don't want to exclude them. And I think that, this is most likely not going to be for a single earner making enough to qualify for this unit if we put it in the 120. But if you've got 2, they're going to be priced out. And so I'm going to stick to my 120. If I'm in the minority, that's okay. But I think there are unintended consequences of setting it too low. And maybe we need more, rather than me just rattling off those numbers off the top of my head, maybe we really need a closer examination of who this would target at those AMI levels.
Council, I wonder if you would consider this proposal that might meet everyone's comments. That is, we put it on the market for rent, from what I hear the majority is leaning towards, and we take applications for those at 100, 120, 100. We're going to take applications in those different price categories. We don't have to set a rent. We're going to seek applications at this 100%, 120. We're going to prioritize, from what it sounded like, those who live and work here in Frisco, or work here in Frisco at a brick and mortar building is what I heard. And we'll take applications at the 2 levels, 100% AMI and 120% AMI. Did you
I would be comfortable with that.
want to
Then what's the decision criteria though? I mean, sure, but then how do we make that decision? Like what? And if we 120% AMI, are we going to charge them, to Andrew's point, 120% rent or?
Mhm. If they qualify at 120%, they would pay the 120% rent. They qualify at 100%. We don't know whether they're going to qualify. You know, we can take applications, and if we're having trouble renting it at any one of those levels, you've prioritized those who work here in 10 Mile. So if we
And
had
I guess
problems,
if that's the case, I'd like to take 80% AMI applications and see who we get. Like, we don't know the character of those people. You know, I think if we're going to take them all, like, why not take the lowest rent also, or the lowest AMI also?
Nancy, how do we do it for the other 15
confusing.
properties when they go vacant?
okay, Eva, we have a long list. Go ahead.
Nancy, did you hear Andrew's question about how we?
I said, Eva, can you explain the rental process? We have a lot of those, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the rental rates that we have primarily on our Mary Ruth complex, which has 8 units there, 4 of which are housed by 10 Mile Basin employees. We currently don't have an AMI criteria cap, but are, as far as a qualifier for who's living in the unit. We haven't looked at their income and said, hey, you make too much. But the rental rate right now is set at 80%. So we do probably have some scenarios like Melissa was describing where you've got 2 people with 2 incomes, maybe just making ends meet in some of our units. And you've got 2 other earners that might be exceeding what they could qualify if we actually looked at their income and qualified them. They might actually make too much.
Like the director of HR at Centura. I mean, that's a good example of somebody.
It's a good example.
Well above 80% AMI, and yet we met a huge need for her, right? But like, are we missing out by not, I don't know. Are we missing out by not qualifying them by AMI?
Well, you're missing money, but that isn't necessarily what the program is set up for. It's not to make money. It's to provide housing for people who can't find it, because finding a rental is the biggest problem. So the goal has been providing a place, not trying to make a profit.
And this unit is vacant, right? We've talked about that. So I guess another, criteria could be, are we looking for someone who could move in tomorrow, right? That could change how we look at applications, depending on their income. Or do we accept all these applications and go through reviewing and have a criteria established, including potential AMI qualifier? And then from there, it's a move-in date of May 1st or something like that.
What a lot of affordable housing managers have to do is do a lottery. Okay, 12 of you qualify. We're going to do a lottery. Everybody's name goes in a hat and somebody draws it. It's that simplistic, to be frank, because there are a lot of qualifiers, a lot of people who qualify for criteria.
I personally, and I think, Melissa, I get all of your points, and it goes back to probably a conversation from one of my first years on council. But one, as you mentioned, AMI is probably one of the worst, most flawed metrics government's forced to work within, and particularly up here. And there's always going to be the outliers and the people we can't capture and the people who are going to benefit from it. And I think, we've gone rounds about it's such a difficult target number to put on, and the way it's calculated isn't always that fair either, especially in our market. And so I think for me, given this, I'm not worried about making money. I want to have a community. I want to have people in houses up here. Let's start. I'd be totally comfortable. Let's start at 100% AMI. And I believe we will have plenty of applicants who will be happy to move into this condo. And who that might be, like we've already done, that might be, somebody who's really going to benefit. And it might be somebody who's taking advantage of the system. But if we're stuck in that system, and that's unfortunate, but we're there, and we've been there with every development we've done with AMI being a basis point.
Now, are we going to, do the Mary Ruth example, are we going to have them prove that they're 100% income?
If we're going to AMI, then we would, yeah.
Yes. If we're setting an AMI, they have to qualify under AMI, which is set by the housing authority. It's the same standard of, you have to prove everything like you do when you buy a house.
So I just want to make this point again. So that's $72,000 for a single person, and or two people, divide that in half. So, we might get a single sort of middle level professional rather. I mean, if that's what you guys are targeting, that's totally fine. But I think it's tough with this one because it's a 1-bedroom. So I would envision, I don't know. That's not my vision for who would move into this unit. I think.
So you think
I'd rather see.
You think 80% would be a better AMI target to get captured up?
I think 120, because then you would have a couple that would combine their incomes to make it work.
Andy, did you want to jump in? I stepped on you, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm just trying to figure out where Melissa's going there. Like the 120, then isn't that a even higher level single professional who's gonna, make it in that unit? And then you're just opening the door for the couple, right? Like as opposed to 80% AMI, as Jesse's saying, that would that open it up to a single teacher?
So 80 is 57.6, and in my
one of our police officers.
Right. So I mean, in my opinion, we have spent too much on this unit to price it. This is not an 80% unit. I think that our future endeavors that we're working on are really well targeted to you really have to, I think that there's a better way of doing 80% units, and this is not it. And so but I'm talking way too much. I've made my case. I'm pretty flexible. I think that I'm still at 120, but I'll stop talking.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. I mean, I think we're a good 40 minutes into AMIs at this point, and I still think I agree with Melissa. It's a target unit for a specific group, and we have future units coming online, but we don't have them yet. So I'm comfortable with anything. I think 100 is a good middle point, but unless other council or Melissa's pushing hard for 120, but I think we need to pick a number and start and go with it for at least a year-long lease and see where we end up. I'd like to hear if anybody else strongly feels one way or the other, or we can pick a.
I thought it was an interesting middle ground to do the 30 days at 100, and if you don't find anybody, but I think we're going to find people at 100. And it seems consistent with our other housing covenants to move on to a broader group if within 30 days you don't find anybody.
I can tell you that I have a list of people that I've been keeping since I was hired. They're going to come. They're going to apply.
So, Andy?
I'm for 100% AMI and renting it at this point with the ability to sell it in the future.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. Andrew, Rick, you guys, I know.
Honestly, I like the people who are 80% AMI as much as I like the people who are 100 or 120. As somebody said earlier, we're going to help somebody get housing. To micromanage which one, I don't really have a strong opinion of. So whatever proposal shows up in that AMI range, I'm going to say yes to.
Okay. So I think hearing that, let's see if we can get somebody in there at 100, and we'll know that we can revisit this condo in future years, and honor Dan and other folks' desire to look at it as more units than at just one at that cost. Is that good? Great. Anything further, Nancy or Don or you guys?
Council.
Great. And I think in our visioning sessions, this will be a good, we've set some of the table for future conversations, which I think will be helpful. Do people need another break before we go on to our next work session item? Yeah. Okay, let's take another 5-minute break. See you guys in a minute.
The history of the changes of the allocations, it hasn't been changed since 2012. And since we do have a budget amendment that we're probably looking at for 2021, this is probably a good time to be revisiting this if council wants to make any changes in those allocations. The memo contains quite a bit of information about the Visitor Information Center, since it is the recipient of the majority of the funds. So I hope that was useful for you. And then on page 3, I went through a lot of the activities that we have funded out of this fund before. It's listed on page 3. Again, keep in mind, this is not a large fund. It does generate about 500,000. So any switching around is going to be kind of limited if we want to do that. Also on page 3, listed some of the options that I could think of that we could move around. We could take some of the items that we're currently funding from the Capital Improvement Fund and maybe fund them out of this particular lodging tax fund. Or we could take some things maybe out of the general fund and move them over. What we're doing though is actually just shifting money around. It's all funding from the town of Frisco. So unless we eliminate one of the activities or projects that we're currently doing, there's not going to be really any savings. We're just shifting money around. So that's really important, I think, for you to understand. I'm sure that you do. And another thing that's important is, like I said before, it does not generate a lot of money. So we can't do a whole lot of projects, and all the things that were mentioned here in the memo, those are simply not, we're not able to do all of those things. So I know you have a very long meeting. And so I will not spend a whole lot more time. I'm available for questions, but I'd really like to throw it back to you for your discussion and give us some guidance of what you would like to see us do.
Thank you, Bonnie. Go ahead,
Sure.
Jesse. Go ahead.
Thanks. I have 2 questions. The first is, when it says 45% of the lodging tax goes towards the VIC, what is the percentage of the VIC's budget that is covered by that 45%? Is it all 100, or is it a portion of?
It covers a portion. So the VIC expenses are about 225,000. That's just kind of an average. And the VIC receives about 250. Keep in mind though that we partner with Copper Mountain, and they provide us with the Visitor Information Center with $30,000. That also goes to help fund the Visitor Information Center. Let me look at my notes here. I can answer you specifically. Does that help a little bit, Jesse?
It's the majority.
Yeah, I mean, if the VIC, if the operational cost is 250,000, I mean, that's 100% of the lodging tax. So I'm just wondering,
The lodging tax is about 500, so it's about 50, almost 50.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. But you're saying Copper helps fund it. I'm just wondering what else funds the VIC besides.
So they used to sell a lot of lift tickets and all of that. They're not doing very much of that anymore, but they do have some retail sales, and they have some ski pass sales, but the majority of it is from the lodging tax. And then Copper Mountain provides the 30,000.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is just, it wasn't included in the memo, but Nancy, I think maybe off the top of your head, you might know this. 2.35% or whatever this lodging tax is ridiculously low for communities like ours. Do you have examples of other communities and what their lodging tax rate is? Because we're out there looking for new money to fund new projects. Moving money around is not where it's going to be. It's in this 2.35%. So
Yeah, sure. I have mentioned this to some council members, but I'll just put it out there on the record. If you want to go to California, you're going to be paying somewhere in resort communities around 14% on your lodging tax, sometimes as low as 10, 12%, but not generally, right? 12 to 14, 16% is what you're going to find. Colorado, this is more in line with Colorado, but maybe more along 5, 6%. You see a lot of lodging taxes. Bonnie, do you have some more local tax information potentially? Resort communities can charge a premium for the fact that you're in a resort community. This is a very, very low tax. Bonnie, do you have some local numbers? We haven't had those. I haven't seen one of those surveys in a while.
No, I haven't seen one either, so I'm not sure.
But
But I know that when I visit someplace, and I'm sure you guys are the same, if you look at your bill when you stay someplace, the lodging tax are significantly higher than what we have here in Colorado, in particular Frisco.
You know, I'm not trying to price gouge anybody coming to Frisco, but we have, you know, one major hotel project on Main Street coming online. We have another proposed at the Baymont. Like we have an opportunity here just with new units coming online anyway. But even 1 or 2% looking at that will generate a decent amount of money. And the fact that it can go towards, you know, our open space trails programs, recreation, the kinds of things that were playgrounds. I mean, we just had this conversation at our last meeting. So I think that's important to keep in mind, and that we are not on par with our peers in this realm. We are far below what they are.
we did a calculation as to what it would take to generate a bit of money. So I don't know if Bonnie remembers what that was just a couple weeks ago.
Well, the one that I was looking at was about $40,000 per person, but Nancy, you and I talked, and I think it's up to about 80,000. So every citizen, is that what you're talking about, Nancy?
No, remember I asked you, could you run some numbers to see what percentage would we have to increase it to get to another 500,000, I think?
We just have to double it.
Yeah,
Because we're
I
making
think
it
there was something else. But yeah, but that's true. So that's true. That's an obvious number. The one thing I do want to point out to Mayor Pro Tem Burley's comment just now, and did we lose the mayor? I think we did.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay. You're not, oh, there you are. Okay. When you have a new tax or additional new tax or additional revenue, it is at that moment when you dedicate it to a specific thing or a project or a program that you do relieve the general fund of those costs. So as Jesse was just saying, like an open space, or do you want to set this amount for recreation? After it becomes part of the general fund, so to what Bonnie was saying earlier, if you wanted to shift money around between lodging or something else you're funding with lodging, that lodging could cover it, then it's not a direct savings because you're paying for it out of the general fund already.
Could I go back just a second, Jesse, to answer your question? So the lodging or the visitor information center receives about 230,000. That's just kind of an average. That's what we have estimated for 2020, and their expenses that we have budgeted for 2020, and we haven't finished 2020 yet. That's why I'm using those numbers. It's about 205. So that lodging tax that comes in does cover in most years the operations for the visitor information center.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think I can safely say that I'm one of the people who asked for this bit of review, and the point kind of is this, you know, the lodging tax can certainly do a lot more than it's doing if when needed to be, it can be more focused on whatever outcome that we're looking to do. But the way it's structured right now, that becomes problematic. You know, there's it's projected to be a $570,000 fund balance in the information center part of this, right? So when I brought this up before, I think it was made very clear that there's some difficulty involved in saying, well, we want to take some of that $500,000 fund balance from the VIC and we want to invest in ICE, or we want to take that $500,000 from the VIC and we want to put it into Meadow Creek or something, or Pioneer Park, or whatever, it doesn't matter. So if the point of the lodging tax, and I could certainly support at some point in the future, when some clearly defined goals, we go back to the tax-paying public who probably see the short-term rental cohort as being ripe to be plucked. If we go back to them, it will be because we want to fund the PRA, or we want to fund ICE at the marina, or whatever that outcome is going to be. It'll be as a result of that conversation. But in the interim, when we look at the total, the $746,000 projected $746,000 fund balance, it's fractured among competing entities, when really then, at the start of the day, the ballot question said, look, just fund all this stuff. So to me, it doesn't make sense to even break it into different components when you could just fund all this stuff and then have a fund balance that you could apply whenever you need to whatever you want, as long as the other stuff was funded. So you could fund the VIC, you could fund recreation. Then you can have clever conversations about what special events you want, or how deep you want to go with recreational programs. And you don't have 4 different confusing fund balances to look at under lodging tax, when really they're all part and parcel of the same desired outcome for the community, which is, hey, let's use this money to fund these things. These things are clearly defined by the ballot issue. We don't need to break 45% to the VIC and build a fund balance that really we can't necessarily use. And please disabuse me of that if that's not correct. So I would come back to this and go, yeah, let's just have a lodging tax fund balance and have conversations about how and where it's going to be applied. Because we arbitrarily picked a number, and over the years it's accrued a fund balance. Now, unless you just want to transfer fund balances to marketing or special events, or take a fund balance and move it somewhere else, let's just make it one fund balance and fund what we want with it, and not have this conflicting purposes within what is supposed to be one overarching community goal.
Councilmember Fallon, in the ballot question, ordinance 03-17 was also adopted by that ballot question, which is why I asked Bonnie to put those exact documents in there. And then the ordinance was later amended in 06, and then later again amended in 12. Those ordinances do set forth a percentage. You would have to at least, and I'll leave that to Thad, but you would have to amend the ordinance.
Yes.
To what extent? I'm not sure the limits.
Yes, and I think you could amend the ordinance so that council dealt with the allocation as part of its budgeting process every year. It's a matter of math. My vague recollection of this, given how long it was ago, was that over time and from time to time, previous councils wanted certainty as to those numbers and a long-term certainty for whatever reasons, but there's nothing magic about it. And it's not required by the ordinance that you, it's not required by the ballot question that you set the allocation by ordinance. What is required is that the council make those allocations. And my advice would be paper that trail carefully if you're not going to mandate it by ordinance. And that's all.
Well, I would just, also because the ballot question did adopt the ordinance. By
Right, no, you have to amend the ordinance, but my point is no part of the ballot question or the ordinance that was adopted makes the council adopt that allocation from time to time within the ordinance. It just decided to do so.
You could amend the ordinance by saying, we're going to put it all in one big pot. That's fine. But I just want to
we're going to distribute it out specifically in these categories by budgeting every year.
I just want to get it in the record. You have to amend the ordinance.
And if you're going to put more tax, it becomes even more important because we can't anticipate. We've already seeing that we kind of spend in these areas, and then if we need to do more recreation, we go grab it from the general fund anyway. Or so, I think it would help us focus from the get-go in terms of course we want to fund the VIC out of this. Makes sense. What else? And build it that way. And then if you're going to get 4.7% or 5.2%, wherever it's going to go, and that fund's going to grow to $1.8 million, You're not struggling with an information center that has unless of course you want to move it into, a high rise somewhere. You don't have a visitor information center that has a $1.4 million budget balance that you can't figure out what to do with because it's tied to the VIC. So that's all I'm saying is I think we should create some more flexibility in this. We understand what we're supposed to allocate it to without a question. But the way it's allocated right now, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense and makes it problematic to focus it where we want it when we need it.
Thanks, Dan. Andrew.
So I mean, I agree with Dan. There's a big difference between what we're doing and a more simple method, meaning just we collect the tax and we spend the tax just like we do the rest of them within the category that's required. So this has been brought up because you're looking for impressions and thoughts. One of them is, I hope like heck when the budget amendment comes out in a couple of months that we're going to spend this money. We've got reserves sitting in every pocket of our existence. So we're strong. Why would we keep this kind of balance in this kind of fund? Spend it for the purpose it's been intended for, and we have reserves in other places. Also, after what I would call unextensive legal research, Frisco has our 2.35% tax, Breckenridge is at 3.4, Aspen is at 2.0, and Vail is at 1.4. I don't know if it's apples to apples, but when you do a quick search for Vail lodging tax, Aspen lodging tax, those are the numbers that come up. So once again, California is crazy.
I did say Colorado was very low and California is very high.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Other thoughts, and I do appreciate Dan bringing this back up. I think it's actually a refresher not even a refresher. I think a conversation I've never had while on council. So it's timely, and I think looking at it at our budget review in March, it might be good to look at some of those fund balances and things that like the playground and other places.
So is there council direction to, when we return with the budget discussion, to bring back some potential draft ordinance that says we're going to put it in one pot? Do you want to do that next year? Do you want to look at options for spending the reserves, a portion of the reserves? We would never recommend spending them down to zero.
Thoughts? I see head nodding, and like Dan would be good to bring back an ordinance to say put it in one pot. And
yes, I understand.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I haven't heard from it. Like to hear from.
I would like to throw my thing in there. It was designed this way to align. So that's why you have 4 divisions within this fund. And I know that it's kind of confusing to you. It's more of an accounting thing, but it was designed to offset so that we could track how much the VIC gets and how much they are spending. And that's why it's set up that way. I think that was council's intent at that time. I would like to see, rather than one pot, I guess it still is one pot, but I certainly would like to see the separation of the VIC so we can keep track of that. I know when council looked at this in 2012, this fund balance was nowhere near this, and some of the recreation, some of them were almost negative. That's why kind of things were shifted around. But I would maybe recommend like cutting it down to make 2 divisions and keep the VIC separate so that we can keep track of that. And every now and then they do have capital projects that they need to do there. There's other items that need to be done out of there. We could maybe transfer the restroom. That's another thing that I didn't think about, the restroom. Actually, I did, it's on the list, but transferring that restroom renovation to those things. I'd recommend, it's all still one pot. It's also one fund. It's just an accounting thing. I'm not sure where the confusion is coming from on that. Does that make sense or not?
Well, when I asked this question before, that's how I approached it, but I thought the response I got was, oh, you can't use the money out of that pocket for that other thing because it's allocated to this, even though the uses are nebulously defined at best. I mean, flowers and some of the stuff could easily come out of the general fund. So yeah, unless you want to introduce to me the criteria in each one of those funds by which those things became specifically allocated to that fund, fine, that'll give me some understanding. But I don't, when I look at the fund, when I look at the budget, Bonnie, in any department, it's pretty clear that I think I understand what you're saying. This line item, this number is for the VIC, all those numbers would be assigned to the VIC then. That would be easy to track. And if you needed to move capital dollars, then it's within the fund and you just allocate it to a capital project. But whatever, I'll leave that to you. You're certainly the expert. So, but right now, yeah, it's not clear why, even as it stands right now, we can't move money from fund to fund. But that's, I thought, what was explained to me when I asked this before.
Yes, that's correct. Councilmember Fallon, ordinance 12-06, so adopted in 2012, sets forth, it's in the packet also, sets forth the amount of funding. And so you cannot, until you amend that ordinance, use the funding differently, but you can, and you have the authority always to amend the ordinance. And what we wanted to check, and what was really important, was to go back to the ballot question to find out if the ordinance was adopted through the ballot question. If it wasn't adopted through the ballot question, totally different, but it was. And so you must always be adopting an ordinance to set, basically you're amending that original ordinance, but you can do that. The stat said you can. So some good lawyer gave you that authority.
You can do it as to those aspects that the question says you can.
Correct. That's
right,
what I.
Which is the allocation of the monies to uses within those categories.
We agree, presumptive reality there, but on the same time that
yes,
you don't have to set a percentage, but you do have to amend ordinance 2012-06.
Just Jesse, I see that you wanted to jump in. I was looking for Dan. I think where I think I agree with you, but I think I'm also confused at the end goal. So like, is there an example that you're thinking about in this budget cycle that would have been easier to do? Like, would this have been a place where we could have just said, what's in the lodging tax fund? Let's pay for the finishing of Walter Byron Park from that because it meets those criteria set forth in the ballot question. Or what's not happening? I guess I can't figure out what's not happening with this money that you think we've missed or we could leverage better. Because I think I agree with the idea. I just think I'm missing what we haven't been able to utilize or take advantage of.
Well, it's becoming a chicken or the egg kind of a conversation, Hunter, I think to some degree. It's becoming a problem that is not a problem necessarily. It's becoming a salient feature of this fund that, that the cash is starting to accrue there. And, it's going to be part of a broader conversation in terms of what our goals are with marketing and investment in amenities. So yeah, when you've got $3,000 sitting in the special events fund and you feel comfortable with the $40,000 that's spent for special events or marketing, there's not much of a conversation to be had. But when you look at this entire fund and $746,000 being projected to land there, as Andrew Aronson said, it should beg the conversation of, okay, how is this, how can this better be applied? And if it can't be applied en masse, and to Nancy's point, yeah, I don't advocate for spending this down to zero or negative balance, but it should invite a conversation about, what can we add to our constellation of amenities, for example, or how can this be applied to help kickstart the PRA plan? Or, there's a number of conversations that you can have once you recognize that it doesn't all have to be spent on recreation just because it says so, because that's the portion of the fund that says recreation. So, it should be the conversation you have every year when you're talking about what's coming up, either through capital investment through this fund or through ongoing investment in continuing programs. So that's where you land. That's the outcome. So it's at 746. Should that be 925? Because so there's, like it's not billions, but $1 million here, $1 million there, $1,000. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. So, you're pushing. You can be pushing $1 million in this fund. How can we apply it to the community's benefit? Pretty sure that the VIC doesn't need to be sitting on $500,000 bucks.
I appreciate it. That's good.
I would recommend a couple of things. Certainly, I agree, Dan. I think there's certainly things that we can move around. And I think if you look on page 3 of the staff memo, there are many things that we can transfer. And that would free up money in the general fund or maybe the capital improvement fund. Some of those are fairly small. There's trails enhancements. I certainly think that fits into the lodging tax fund, the playground and improvements, public art projects. All of those things there, and those total about $380,000. Those could be transferred out of the capital improvement fund, paid for by the lodging tax fund, and free up $380,000 in the capital improvement fund for other projects. That would draw that fund balance down some. There are some other things that are in the general fund that could be transferred and free up money in the general fund that could be transferred. So I certainly think that could happen. I would make a recommendation though, that at this same time that we have reserves, we have required reserves for some of the other funds, the general fund, the water fund, the marina fund. I would recommend that council establish a reserve for this particular fund too. At this time when we're going through this change in this fund, I think that would be a safety measure.
So I think what we'll do then is bring back these recommendations when we bring back the budget amendment discussion in March, if council's good with that. And you'll have these list of things that we need to amend the budget for, things that are left unfunded, and you can make the decision at that time. And this will give you time to think about it. So it's about 6 weeks. We're bringing back that discussion. I think we're bringing it second meeting in March.
I would also welcome any council suggestions of anything that you think that we're currently doing out of one of our other funds that would qualify under this fund. I may have missed something. There might be something that's obvious to you that wasn't to me. And I think Nancy and I would both appreciate your input if you can think of anything else that we might be looking at. What do you think, Nancy?
Jesse, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks. And it's more a clarifying question, but Andrew, thank you for your unofficial research. Nancy, when you cite the California lodging tax, is that the local lodging tax or is that the counties plus the state? Because when I just pulled up Breckenridge's again, right? And to Andrew's point, it's 3.4%, but then and I had this number of 12% in my head, but that's because their sales tax and accommodations include state tax, sales tax, county lodging tax, town lodging tax. And so that all adds up to 12%. And so when I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking about what California is doing.
Yes, I'd definitely rather bring you a detailed analysis so you can
Okay.
compare apples to apples, because Vanessa was just texting me about Vail's 4% plus 1.4 in marketing. Breck has the 3.4 plus 2.5. In California, it can be as high as 25% when you're calculating, like the town of Coronado, for example, has a resort fee and they have a special tax fee and they have a redevelopment fee. So if you want to look at apples to apples, what does it cost to stay in a hotel and adding all those taxes? We are happy to bring that because there's lots of reports about that. And I think our taxing consultant can even help us with that.
Well, and I think, and I don't know that we need to go as far as California, but when Andrew points out that Vail is lower than what we are, that I was like, oh, that's actually not what I had in my head, because sometimes people cite a number that's a lot bigger because they're adding all of these other little, they're grouping accommodations and sales taxes together as a total percentage, and here we're not. So I just wanted to clarify my statements, and thank you for pointing that out. But maybe we could, if we do that analysis, let's just make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
Yes, we get this report. Cass does it. Also, we can get it from, like I said, our taxing consultant, because if you're going to consider how we compare to all the other taxes, you do want to look at, as best you can, the net to the visitor. When they go to a hotel, what are they paying? Because that's what the visitor thinks. I check out and I go, whoa, I never thought that price. That's the number we're looking for, right? They don't care that it goes to the tree people, to this people. They don't care. They just know that I thought I was getting a room at 200 and now it's 250. So we'll bring that back. Whatever we have handy, we won't spend a lot of, we'll find it. There are lots of reports.
Any other questions? Everybody good with that? Nancy's direction on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I think
I'm,
we,
I'm good with everything. One thought to Bonnie is if I don't know if I'm talking pennies or real dollars, but if the Vic is now the booking agent for the marina, similar to them getting a commission from Copper for booking events, then we should be talking about or considering, should the marina be paying the Vic for being their reservation agent? Because somewhere in this report said that's become a substantial event.
The marina does pay an administrative fee, but it goes to the general fund. And so does the water fund. They both pay administrative fees to the general fund for handling all the billing and all that sort of stuff.
but yeah, that's a good, because that is an enterprise fund, that should come back in to this fund, since the people in the fund are paying that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Great. Other discussion or questions? You comfortable with that direction?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Oh, I lost my agenda. Excuse me. Oh,
Going into the.
well, as I said earlier, we've had to amend the this evening's agenda. So work session item number 3 will not be taking us to 10 o'clock this evening. But I do want to say, since we are postponing that to another time, look for the email from Brody for scheduling for that special meeting to do the social equity training. Correct, Nancy? Is that?
Yes, I just want to say that I know council has indicated, a number of them, that special meetings are not their preferred meeting time. And so maybe since it's on the agenda, you might want to talk for just a minute to talk about whether you want a special meeting or whether you want to add it to meeting. And there's been a lot of conversation about how important this training is. And I don't think there was clear understanding this is a 6-hour training. So it's either 3 2-hour sessions or 2 3-hour sessions or special meetings. It's going to make any agenda longer. And
how does council feel? We could also just add the council meetings as scheduled to that doodle poll to see if that's where it falls to be the best possible time for other folks, knowing that it is an investment of time. I'm happy to make either happen. Andy Held, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, thanks. If we're gonna add these onto council meetings, I would suggest 3 2-hour chunks instead of the 2 3-hour on top. Our meetings run long typically anyway. And then, I'm relatively available for a special meeting if that needs to happen.
Thanks, Andy. Other thoughts, Melissa?
Totally agree with that, Andy. I think, for this one, I generally like to keep things within the meeting, but I would personally be okay with going outside of, I think that it's really tough. We all have very different jobs and work-life balance. But personally, I'd be happy to do something like at 7:30 or 8 a.m. on a Friday morning. I mean, something where what I worry about is if we tag it onto a council meeting, we're all pretty exhausted. I mean, it's tough to, I think we really need to be fresh for this. We need to be engaged. And it's possible in a council meeting, but I'd be very open to a special meeting. And I don't think it needs to happen like bam, 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 like 3 weeks in a row. I think we can spread it out if the consultant is open to it, so that it's, one session a month for 3 months or something. But I think, 3 hours at a council meeting is definitely a bit too long. So, but, and I also wanted to say, I was communicating with Tamara, the county commissioner, and she wanted just to pass along, she wanted to be here tonight for that conversation. So I let her know that it was postponed, and we'll let her know when it's rescheduled. But so I just wanted to let you guys know that other people are following this, and it's a really important discussion.
Thanks, Melissa.
I can add to the doodle poll both regular meetings and we'll do like some preferences or something. Okay.
Is that good with everybody? Excellent. And I agree with Melissa. I think it is important. And I think I do have reservations about adding it to meetings just because it is something that I want to be engaged personally and not distracted by other town work. So I think we'll see where the poll takes us, and happy to keep this going, but it is important. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Then with that, we are on to the consent agenda.
It's exciting. It's got solar on it. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Fallon. Any discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to old business, this is agenda item number 4. This is the second reading of ordinance 21-02, an ordinance amending chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Frisco concerning the Planning Commission by amending section 41-1 concerning officers' meetings, rules, and records to clarify provisions concerning terms for officers and scheduling of meetings. I will open up the public hearing and turn it over to Nancy. To Don. Sorry, Don.
Don, thank
Again,
you. I'm sorry.
the way the cameras pop up, I apologize, Don. It's all yours. Thank you.
No problem. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This is second reading of an ordinance that was approved on first reading at the January 26th meeting. This is a very simple clarification to chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinance related to planning commissions and meeting and schedules and officers, just to make the code consistent with how the Planning Commission has been operating in the past couple of years. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Again, it's very minor word changes.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? Great. Then I'll open up for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Back to council discussion and perhaps a motion.
Mayor, I would move that we approve on second reading on ordinance amending chapter 41 of, ordinance 21-02, an ordinance amending chapter 41 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Frisco concerning the Planning Commission by amending section 41-1 concerning officers, meetings, rules, and records to clarify provisions concerning terms for officers and scheduling of meetings.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Fallon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Aronson, I believe. Any further discussion? Please call the question.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5. This is our continuing general discussion and action on the COVID-19 response and approval of resolution 21-05, a resolution of the Town of Frisco, Colorado, extending an economic relief program for businesses, directing the immediate implementation of the program in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorizing the expenditures of funds for the program. I'll open up the public hearing, turn it over to staff and Nancy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is on your agenda, this particular proposed resolution that's in your packet in red line form in response to the council's interest, though not decision or straight direction, to consider whether or not you want to extend the business grant program and expand the business grant program. So one, do you want to extend the date by which people could apply because it expired January 31st? Do you want to extend that date to a date yet to be decided? Although as in the drafted ordinance, we put in March 31st, you could pick any date. And do you want to expand it to include new businesses or any other businesses? As discussed in your last meeting, if you wanted to open this grant program up to new businesses, a new section was added to the ordinance that would allow businesses that opened between January 1st of 2020 and a date yet not decided. So opened in January and they had revenues of less than 250,000, they'd be eligible to apply for a grant of about $2,500 or 2 times their rent, whichever is greater, and so on, as was mentioned at the last meeting. The reason the date is not decided or proposed as to they opened their business is because many of the grant programs said you had to open between January 1st and March. But in council's discussion, it was very unclear. And if you are going to allow this grant program to go to new businesses, really doesn't matter what day that they opened, if they opened in January and if they opened in 2020, unless you want to pick a specific date, because there was some discussion. If you opened after April 1st of 2020, maybe it's all on you, that you opened, you knew what you were getting yourself into, kind of thing. So there's pretty much an exact replica of the business grant program for the new business grant program, and it's laid out in the resolution. So basically 2 questions before you. Do you want to extend the deadline by which folks can apply for the grant to March 31st or another date of your choosing? And do you want to expand the program to allow new businesses? One thing I will say, we did receive a couple of applications right after the deadline. I've also had questions from council as to how much we've granted out. So I just want to be specific with you. As of right now, we have granted out $215,000 in the Frisco business grants through this cycle. So of course we gave out the other 505,000 earlier in the year. 86,000, almost 87 for innovation grants. That was that whole new grant program to help businesses with all kinds of supplies and expenses. It has reimbursed businesses for all kinds of things, computers, point of sale, specific kinds of things they had to do, like for HVAC and all kinds of things. So total of $301,558. So the amount council had set aside was 500,000, so that leaves 199, just under 199,000 still available should you extend the program and should you expand it. And then lastly, I did want to also mention that we have received for the state/county/town combined grant, 93, okay, I'll explain again, 93,500 in requests. This was the grant program that all of the towns in the county got together and applied for the state for all of the leftover funding that the state had under the CARES Act. And they had till Sunday night to apply. They don't know, the businesses don't know how much they're going to get, because what we did as a county, all the towns in the county, we said, we're going to distribute the funds based on how many applications. Well, Breckenridge businesses turned in the most applications. Town of Frisco, the second most applications. Our number is about $93,500. Silverthorne and Dillon only had a couple of applications. So we're pretty confident that the maximum amount available is going to be granted. We won't know till the county tells us. We have a meeting on Friday to find out how much did everybody turn in, but $500,000 is what our grant from the state was. We think we'll be able to distribute everything in our town businesses that applied for. And then third, while you're still thinking about what you want to do, I wanted to let you know, and for the record, that the federal stimulus package draft language that's going around, I did send it to council, but I wanted to let it know for the public. We've gotten a hold of some of that early draft language. And right now, under Biden's stimulus plan, they're setting aside $25 billion for restaurants only, of which about 1/5 of that will go to restaurants as defined in the language, places that serve food, generally was a better way to say that. For those kind of businesses that had revenue of less than $500,000, so very small businesses. They're really trying to target that industry that was hit hardest in the hospitality industry. So there's additional funding coming through that. There's also additional funding coming through the PPP loans. And of course, with one party in control of essentially both chambers and the White House. They're pretty confident that that package is going to get passed, and they expect a vote on those to be final and signed around early March. There is funding coming through for targeted relief. So do you want to extend the deadline to apply, and do you want to expand this program?
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. Specific questions before we answer question number one, which is extending the date. Is there any clarification folks need? Thoughts? All right. How do people feel about extending the date? And are people good with the March 31st? Don't want to extend the date, Dan?
No, and I want to wrap up this round of funding. And if we do, I don't want it to go past another week. You know, if we've just gotten a couple new applications, we're really done. I want to wrap this round up, see what we have left reasonably, and then talk about next round. And if somebody didn't make this round, if there's an appetite to create another tier, then certainly those people could apply, because the tier is going to be more inclusive, not less inclusive. So if they didn't apply in time, chances are they're probably still going to be eligible. We're just trying to broaden it. But we need to end this round to see what we're dealing with, to see what we want to apply, if we want to apply to the next round, and what that, you know, who we're trying to reach out to and what that criteria is going to be. But extending it does not preclude those people from participating in another round. If we're going to help new businesses and also reach out to maybe other businesses, some other select businesses, not select, I'm not picking winners or losers, but if we're going to identify or create a case for other businesses who have not been helped yet, but who were still affected negatively by the pandemic or locally economically, then we'll need another round. How much we're going to put into that is open for discussion, of course, or if we're going to do it at all. But again, unless we're not going to do anything else, there's no reason to extend the round. We can just end it and do the next thing.
Thanks, Dan. Other thoughts? Andy, jump in.
I'll play your devil's advocate. And why do more work? Why not just extend it till we're out of money? You know, we're looking to give this money out, and so, you know, why do we need to end it? You know, I'm aware of a couple businesses that, you know, have been attempting, you know, and for many reasons, you know, weren't able to make the deadline. You know, I'm for extending it.
Anyone else? Where folks? The door's open for both paths here.
Yeah,
Dan.
and I see your point. You know, it could certainly go that way. I guess my feeling was I wanted to see a finite end to this, and then let's create some space. Let's see how much money we have to deal with, and then move on. I mean, we're seeing some numbers here that probably are going to exceed any new round of funding that we decide to fund. So I certainly concede your point, and I don't have a problem with that. If you just want to layer this next thing on top of it and have it proceed concurrently, yeah, I can go with that. I thought we were going to be a lot tighter, frankly. But again, as has been pointed out to me in conversations, we're not obligated to spend what we have there. We've made a commitment to trying to help as many people we can with the resources that we have. At some point, the question has to be asked, is this the best way to benefit the community as a whole? And, you know, does this end? You know, does it end when we're out of money, or does it end when we say it ends and apply that money in another way that we see as beneficial, but a different avenue?
Can I, sorry.
Go ahead, Rick, and then Nancy will come back.
Okay, and I'm curious to hear, yeah, but Nancy, I just say, thanks, fellas. If we're looking at these two questions, one is to extend it, and two is, are we going to expand it? If our goal, I'm not for spending money just because it's there, but if we have those few businesses that got their applications in and we're going to broaden it, to Andy's point, I don't see the point in creating any work when we can change it with an amendment and a date change.
Go ahead, Nancy. Thanks, Rick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to be clear, this program has ended. Council asked us at the last meeting to go ahead and let it expire and to come back with what we have left and who also applied and what their thoughts were about it, kind of thing. So that's what happened. It expired. Who applied was a couple of businesses missed the deadline. I will want to give a huge shout out again to Vanessa, the team. I know I'm going to start missing people, but Soleil and Carly and Dylan and Brody and Bonnie and all of us on the team, everybody, Diane. So a lot of outreach to businesses to make sure that they applied both for the state, county, town grant and also ours so that we could answer that question. We have a few businesses who've said, yes, I am a new business and I really think I really do need help. And this is kind of why that criteria was put forth in the drafted resolution, because the council asked, tell us what need you still have out there. So there were a couple businesses new that are a need according to them and what they've suffered. And then there are a couple who missed the deadline, but quite a number didn't miss it because our team really reached out. So this program is over and it's 199,000 is what's left. So if you want to extend it, I'm just trying to make it easy. Here's the resolution. You can just pick a deadline and make it a little bit easier. And then if you want to expand it, it includes the new businesses. I hope that's more clear.
Yep. And I think that's kind of what Andy, you were getting at. Yeah. Melissa, did you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I am for, for the same reasons in our last time we discussed this for those new businesses. I know you can't name names, but I would like to understand why people missed the deadline. I know I got a lot of questions from people like, who do I call? So hopefully they found, mostly pointed them to Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa. So anyways, bottom line, I definitely would like to extend it and expand. Expand.
Hunter, Mayor Mortensen, do you think
Yes.
I could address Melissa's question? I'm sorry, Councilmember Sherburne's question. I'm a little I apologize. People miss deadlines for many reasons. And what I've really seen is people have an incredible overload. And I actually explained to a number of businesses that they had not applied for this when I called them.
Oh, wow.
One business that you sent to me, who I said, you haven't applied. Let me explain it to you again, because I really want you to apply.
Yeah.
And they got confused with the Summit County Innovation Grant. And then this Colorado Small Business Relief Grant came out, and there was just, people are stressed and overloaded.
Yeah.
And they are missing deadlines for that reason. And I really feel for them. Like reading comprehension has gone down a lot, I think, because of that.
Yeah.
Because we're so stressed and we have so much information in our heads. But there are at least 4 new businesses that are really hoping that council goes down this road, who had planned long before March 2020 to open. And there are a number of businesses that just fall into that category that just need a lot of help, and finance. Dylan, Soleil have been wonderful about helping them. Bill Gibson has helped along a lot of applications in that way. And they just need a little bit more help. And that's why they've missed this deadline. And you know what? Not everybody, we try to reach people 5 different ways. So at the 5th time, you should know this is happening. But some people have even unplugged to the level where they're not even connected 5 different ways.
And again,
well, I just want to say thank you, Vanessa, for, you and the team have just been amazing and made it happen for a lot of these business owners. So I really can't thank you enough.
Your goal as a council was to make sure that these businesses survive, because they are vital to the character and culture of Frisco. And so we took that very seriously, and we want to keep doing that. And there are still some businesses that I know, without naming names, you would feel are integral to what is Frisco. That's as far as I'll go with advocating, but I do think it's some good stuff that you're considering.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from folks we haven't heard from?
What's the extension that's being considered?
I put March 31st in there, no particular reason, because council just likes to continue check in on things, but any date of council's choosing.
I'll weigh in, and I'd say I'm good with kind of what Melissa and Andy have said, that extend it. I'm fine with the March 31st date. Let's open it to those businesses that we've missed. Let's meet the goals of what Vanessa just so eloquently said about our need to really take care of the community and the ones who make us financially vibrant. And I think that's important. I think we can do that. Dan and then Andy.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dan, and then
Oh,
Andy.
all right. So, and I'm good. That's fine. That's great. So I would say, though, if we're going to focus for a minute on new businesses, the guidelines that that Vanessa did put together, I do struggle with a bit. I think even if it's a new business, we need a better correlation between the one that's been suggested, you know, gross, just out of hand, doesn't really encapsulate whether a business is struggling or to what degree. And I think probably, you know, the same criteria that we used for businesses who could demonstrate something year over year, we can just apply to new businesses and say, I think easily, hey, show us whenever you started to December 31st, give us your P&L and show us, you know, we're looking for a metric for how you struggled. So easily it could be if it's negative net, easy. If it's negative net 10%, easy. It's the same criteria, just in reverse. So if you're going to be looking at a business that came out and it's, you know, up 15%, it's a new business and they're netting out at 15%, they don't need a check. All right. They you know, either their business model worked or they figured it out, whatever. If we're really looking at trying to not really be, again, overly assumptive about who we're helping, we can just say, look, show us that you are, and it could be 5% or less or 0% or less. A lot of people, once they're in that range, you've got owners who aren't even taking paychecks, right? So they're gonna be doing whatever they can just to break even. So if they're at 0%, you want to help them out. You know, they might even be at 5% just because the owners are not paying themselves. You know, so I would look at it from that standpoint and still look at, you know, find a metric that has to do with their performance and then walk it backwards. The other component would be if we want to try and expand it to businesses that were not necessarily directly affected by PHOs, I would like to, you know, talk about considering, you know, commercial core, go back to the original parameters of the original program, brick and mortar, commercial core, show us January 1st, December 31st, 15% of that loss, and then we can help you out because we've helped out the people who were directly impacted. Let's expand that boundary just a little bit, bring some more people into the fold. It doesn't have to be for the same amount of money. We could cap it at $2,000, cap it at $3,000, but I think it's time to look outside that line and see who we could bring in. So those are my two comments about new versus existing. If we're trying to look who we can incorporate into the expanded program.
Thanks, Dan. Nancy, I can let you address Dan, and then Andy who's next.
So Mayor, would it be okay to share my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to share the resolution so everybody could see it. It's in the packet and it's on page 197 in your packet. This is what was proposed and it came from the state. I give Vanessa and others credit for everything, but anyway, she's making sure that we know state came from it. What Dan is talking about is instead of having, I'm sorry, Councilmember Fallon, instead of having these categories of a certain amount of revenue or less and creating rent, is to coming up with more of a loss type analysis as we did here. The loss analysis comes from the previous year. And this was a lot of work actually for our staff to do, and it's okay because that's what we do. What I'm going to suggest, Councilmember Fallon, is the kind of analysis you're talking about out of a P&L is not a P&L can be typed up on a computer, and we asked businesses in the loss who lost revenue. We really led the way, and a lot of other towns have used what we've done as well, that it really had to be a loss based on what the town's taxes were. We've had people even try saying things like, no, I paid less. No, we're going to go with the taxes you paid last year. And we know what that number is. So to ask new businesses either to have to jump much harder through a hoop, and what they're going to do is they're going to have a P&L they typed up. It could be true, it might not be true, it's what they thought might be true, or a business plan. We're just trying to make this as similar to the businesses who already received grants based on revenue, because that's what all the others are based on, is revenue. The revenue loss, well, they don't really have a revenue loss. They have hoped for revenue that they didn't achieve, or they might have achieved it. And then it's already a little bit less equal, but it is somewhat fair as compared to the current grant. And I will say the federal legislation that came out today that I sent the draft language was so complicated for new businesses. They're paying someone to try to help businesses navigate that system. So I respectfully suggest that that would be a very difficult proposition for us to try to figure out what they thought they were going to make. And everything would just be based on their word anyway. So we were trying to make it as similar to the current grant as possible. Sorry.
To be clear, P&L is just a net. It's not a projection. It's a performance. It's
right.
You made money you didn't. It's not a, you're not comparing it to anything else. They just say, this is what we did for the 8 months we were open. We lost $18,000. That's what it says. But I understand your point about who would produce the P&L.
Right.
Most people, run it through the votes, but I got you.
Right.
Andy, go ahead.
It's difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Probably just point of clarification, if it's their revenue generated over months or each month or something, it's still based off of their initial forecast of what they thought they were going to be able to make in a regular world, right? And it's got to be reasonable, no?
No, it's just it's just what it costs them to open their doors over a period of time. It's not compared to, you're not trying to defend their business model. You're just asking for their expenses to operate their business. So just like you and your business, if you want your monthly expenses, you can run your P&L at the bottom. It's just like your budget. So no, this is not a comparison thing against any projection. It's just the P&L. It's just profit versus loss. This is what it costs you to run your business for the month, for the year, for whatever period, reporting period you want.
Okay, so if Nancy's saying that that's not necessarily as easy or reasonable, then Nancy, we're saying that, two times rent or up to 2,500 or whatever we were doing, and they're just going to get it as it is. I mean, that doesn't give us a metric.
Right. There is no metric on loss. That is correct. The P&L is based on their income and expenses for the month. We did not ask any other business to do that. And so trying to create something as fair to the current business program. So for example, our concern is that some of the other businesses that have received grants and a lot of grants were not asked to do P&L, and they suggested that. And they actually suggested net loss would be very significant and much greater than the amount that we were suggesting and the grant is based on, which was a kind of a simple calculation as a revenue reduction. The revenue reduction is now what all the federal, state, local agencies are doing because it's as equal to every business as something can be. Net is very different. You simply say my payroll is $20,000 and you're done. It's a typed up number that you put into your P&L. And if you're going to base a grant on something that we can't measure, we can't verify your expenses at all. And we verified no expenses among any other grants for this very reason. People could just put in any net number they wanted to. So we were trying, so we did it on revenue, right? And that's what everyone's modeled it after. And not everyone modeled after us. It just means all the grants are modeled after that. So trying to find something that was as similar as possible, and the state came up with this similar idea. So it's where we got this from. It's revenue.
It's exactly the same way the state, well, it's very close to how the state dealt with it, but they did a little tiny bit different. But basically they just said, if you are a new business, we are just going to look at how much money you made in 2020, and that's what we're going to base it on. And we're not going to look at loss at all. We are just going to assume that there was a hardship that you did not anticipate because of COVID-19. I wish I were incredibly original and brilliant, but I stole this from the state.
You are incredibly original and you are super brilliant. But besides that, one other thing I wanted to say though is about, so one equalizer is this rent. So it's not a flat out grant. You know, what's really smart about the grant that we have is we did it 2 times rent. We did this on the version that's out right now and what we're proposing here. And the 2 times rent. So let's say you took in $1 million or more, you're most likely to be a bigger business and you're most likely to have greater expenses. You're most likely going to have greater rent than the small coffee shop that's taking in $250,000 or something. So that 2 times rent is a bit of an equalizer. And that's another reason we thought this was as equal to, similar to the grant we have right now. So that rent structure really helps equalize what otherwise could be a just cutting people check. We're not doing that. We're saying based on your rent, this is the maximum.
So we're
Fair
kind of
enough.
splitting hairs.
I'm in support. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, our goal is to get this money out. You know, but in terms of that, and I'm happy if that's the agreed upon. The state came out with this, and I'm good with their promoter. That's fine. The issue would be if you had somebody that opened in February and was open for 11 months versus somebody who opened in November and is open for 1 month. You're going to have. But I mean, pick your inequality wherever you're going to have it. It's going to exist somewhere. If the goal is just to to get people out, then that's fine. I'm not going to sweat the details too much.
And Councilmember Fallon, the state actually, that is the thing for you to still decide. The state said you had to be a new business that opened between January 1 through March 26th.
I was going to have them think about that after. Like,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be quiet now. I'm going to go.
Let's just get one at a time.
I think I've mentioned I'm in support. That's most of us. Anybody else want to weigh in on this direction? People are good with extending it to the date and expanding it to these groups kind of based on that grid that was Nancy shared from her screen in the red line document.
Okay, well then we will take Vanessa's question.
Because then we can move on to the cliffhanger question.
Yeah, it's in there also. I just briefly covered it and I knew it would be a little bit dicey. So we're suggesting, that new business is defined as someone who opened a new business between January 1st, 2020 and what date? So the state, as Vanessa was just going to say, I think it was March 31st, Vanessa, or March 1st or something like that.
March 26th.
Oh, that's right. Some weird date. Some council, when you had this discussion, you said, well, you know what? If you opened later in the summer, that's on you or something. And so we didn't put a date in there. So we thought you could have a fun conversation discussing what date should it be that they opened between January 1st and what?
Looks like Jesse has the answer for us. So
No, I have a question. Of the 4 or 5 that you've received that are new businesses, how many of them were in March? I mean, is this a moot point?
This one.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm opened in the summer.
But we might as well do it for everybody.
It would be 2. It would be 2 and the rest were August. Just a heads up without.
A couple of them. They started before August, so they didn't. So one of them one of them planned to open in March, and then a whole bunch of things happened, and they tried that they don't know. I don't know. Oh my gosh, should I open? I don't know. So they had their business license, they had their TI done, and they kind of kept waiting for the right day, and then, okay, they got a day. So it's not that they did nothing. I don't think we have any applications that did nothing, because I think I had one council who asked, what if they did some TIs or they got a building permit or something like that? But pretty much they all meet the idea that I don't know when they all got their business license, but
The two that opened in August had been working on major construction on their new spaces.
I just don't see why we would have a 30-minute conversation on this to to do one business that was open in March. I mean, we might as well do it for 2020, and then after that, like, it's on you. I struggled with this one at first but now I'm just like, we have the funds available. They're, you know, we're not naming them here, but we know who they are, and I think they're important businesses for the community, and it's 4 of them is not going to break the bank.
well, and I think as proposed, the drafted language addresses that if you started later in the year, your revenue is going to be less, so you're going to have a lesser grant than if you did start earlier, so you might have a greater loss. So I actually think it kind of hits all those points, not to advocate.
I would be comfortable with that because of that, for that reason.
Anytime in 2020 through December 31st, 2020.
I see, Andrew says yes, Andy says yes, Rick, Jesse's shoulder shrugged, Melissa's in. So I think there's council
Yeah,
support to go
you
that
got the
direction.
numbers. I struggle with this, but that's a good thing. This is a good problem to have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
then,
Appreciate
if the
that.
council's interested in adopting this motion, I would say that if in doing so, you would adopt the resolution as proposed, but including the date in section 2 that new businesses were opened between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. And that the date of extending the deadline is as proposed. So you only need to add the date of the new business through December 31st, 2020.
Is there, I'm going to make sure there's no one wishing to make public comment this evening, unless there's further questions. I know I got a little out of order because I'm used to this being an ongoing discussion and not an actual motion. I apologize, but is there any public comment in regards to this conversation in the proposed ordinance? Great. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Perhaps someone willing to make a motion.
Right?
Yep,
One
Dan,
question.
go ahead, please.
Is this motion just on this for new businesses? Or is this going to close the conversation for COVID? But the point is there, thumbs up or thumbs down? Does anybody else have an appetite to expand the BAP to businesses not directly affected by PHOs that are not new businesses? Yes or no, up or down?
Yeah, I think I don't at this time, Dan, but I appreciate you asking that. And I'd see Andrew says he doesn't have and Andy. So I think not at this time, if that's, thank you. And thank you for asking. I appreciate that. And is there a motion?
All right, I got this. Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 21-05, a resolution of the town of Frisco, Colorado, extending the economic relief program for businesses, directing the immediate implementation of the program in response to COVID-19 public health emergency, and authorizing the expenditure of funds for the program with the proposed program end date that's in the resolution, and with the new business section 2 with a date between January 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem
Second.
Burley, seconded by Councilmember Hell. Is there any further discussion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Inkin,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson. Andy, you were muted.
Quick on it. Yes.
Thank you. Burley,
Me too. Yes.
Allen,
I'm a no.
Held.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Any other further COVID questions or concerns? I know Dan brought up a good one. If not, next item is to adjourn, I believe.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week. Stay well.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Deborah.